episode 127 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So this week we are talking about our next little short story from Assassin's Blade. And this one is called The Assassin and the Desert.
Mm-hmm.
Not dessert. We're not eating sweets. The desert.
It would be fun, though, if it was
yeah. And
dessert.
Essentially, it follows very quickly after The Assassin and the Healer, like the story with Yrene.
Mm-hmm.
But it's her getting to her destination.
Yeah, so I guess we get a bit more about what happened when she got back from Skulls Bay. Mm-hmm. So basically, they were pulled into Arobyn's office, and he beat the shit out of her while Sam watched. And we also get that, like, Sam screamed, "I'll kill you," during that, which is obviously not something that you would say to your master, you know?
No, it just sort of, like, demonstrates how, I don't want to put down Sam, but sort of how bad he is at, like, playing the game. Like, you sort of see him try in The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. Like, you see him try and be, like, this cool, like, indifferent sort of a person. And, like, their relationship hasn't really gone anywhere since then. Like, it's not like they've proclaimed their love for each other or anything like that when he's beating her up. Like, none of that happened. But it's just him showing his cards when he's really shouldn't.
Yeah. And, like, realistically, he should know that Arobyn's not gonna kill Aelin. Like, yeah. I mean, Selena. Whatever the fuck her name is. But yeah, so we get, like, she has a flashback of that moment. This is a longer one, I feel like, but basically she's shipped off to the Red Desert to the Silent Assassins, who she needs to get an approval letter from the Mute Master by the end of her month that she's allowed to be there. So basically she gets there, and at first, he won't train her, but then, of course, he does train her, and he teaches her to move like an asp, which is something that comes up in every single book Sarah J. Maas writes. She uses the word asp to describe someone moving. We also meet Ansel Briarcliff, yes. I think is her last name. Yeah.
But I can't remember if it's Ansel Briarcliff or Ansel of Briarcliff.
Yeah, because she's from Briarcliff, but I also think it's named after her family. So right. I wonder if her name is, like, Ansel Briar. You know what I mean? And they just call it Briarcliff because it's cliffy. But not sure. So she's actually from the Wastes. And she tells Selena that her family was murdered. And she hasn't told the Mute Master that. So she's there, and she's kind of just, like, saying that her father sent her. But she confides in Selena that her family was murdered, and she's, like, trying to find her way now.
Yeah.
And she wants to go back and take back over.
Yeah, reclaim her kingdom?
Yeah, which is, like, funny to us, because we've read so many obviously witch stories with Manon, and they're like, the wastes are ours. Yeah. So,
and Ansel's like, no, bitch, that shit is mine.
Yeah. Depending on when you read this book, there are a few, like, tidbits in it that, like, go back to other books. So we hear a passing thing about how she had a crush on Archer, which is funny because he's now dead.
And she killed him.
She killed him, yes. We hear about Kraken witches and Iron Teeth witches. Ansel tells her that Iron Teeth, like, eat children. And she tells her about the curse that the Krakens put on the Iron Teeth, which we end up hearing more about. Interestingly, Celaena meets a merchant who gives her spider silk. And he says he sold 20 years of his life for it. And only the death of a spider can get the years back for him. So he's like, will you go kill the spider for me? And she's like, I'm here until the end of the summer. Like, maybe after that, maybe I guess. Later. And he's like, okay, cool. Here's some pieces of spider silk. And you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
For free, which is...
It's funny because don't we meet this person this week?
Yeah, exactly. So. That's why it's like the timing of each of these stories, they work out like we planned it.
Yeah, we definitely planned it. Guaranteed.
Oh my god. We also get the story of how she stole the Asterian horse, which she just talks about in the COM.
Oh, Crown of Midnight?
Crown of Midnight. I was like, I forget the name of it. I only know the acronym. Ilias is the Mute Master's son, and he's in it, and he has a crush on her. Mm-hmm. And his crush actually makes her realize that she's starting to have feelings for Sam, and she's like, eee. So that's big. And then basically the whole point of the story is there's a lord that is, I guess, near these deserts that's trying to kill the assassins to get in good with the king of Aelin. And Ansel is kind of like the messenger between... his name's Lord Barrick, I think, and the Mute Master. And she ends up basically fucking over the assassins, and she poisons Celaena, brings her out to the desert with her horse, and leaves her there, and just leaves her a note saying, like, this is what the Mute Master wanted. Here's your letter of referral. Goodbye. And then as Celaena is leaving, she sees, like, soldiers coming towards the Assassin's Keep, and she's like, oh, I guess he didn't want me around for that. And then she, like, keeps leaving, and then eventually has a change of heart and turns around and goes back.
Yeah.
But it takes her longer than you'd think. But anyway, she goes back, she ends up, like, saving the Mute Master's life, and of course he gives her her recommendation letter, and she ends up, like, kicking Ansel's butt, and she promises that she'll, like, shoot an arrow after her in 20 minutes, but she gives her 21 minutes, and that extra minute saves her life.
Right.
So yeah, that's most of it. And I think, like, especially in Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, we get a bit of her being wary of female relationships, and it's like, that's where, this is where that comes from, and then Nehemia fucks her over too, and you're like, what a sin.
Yeah, because, like, Ansel is her roommate at the school, or I say school, at the, like, Assassin's Keep. She's been there since she was, like, 13 years old. Like, she's been there a really long time. I just find it really funny that, like, okay, so I understand Arobynn being like, this is a punishment, I'm sending her away. But, like, he's just sending her to become more talented and, like, more capable of beating him. So, like, I don't really understand, like, apart from being like, I'm sending you to the desert, which is hot and sucks. Like, I get that. But other than that, I'm just like, why are you sending her to get more training? Like, and have her be more capable of like, getting the better of you. I don't understand that mentality. Because, like, obviously he's seeing that she's starting to rebel a little bit from, you know, like, ruining his deal with Rolf and Skull's Bay and all that. Like, he sees that she's starting to sort of understand and adopt her own values that are different from him. So I just feel like sending her for more training to make her an even more adept killer is a mistake.
Yeah, it does seem odd. Like, maybe he had always planned on sending her there for some training. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense.
No. Anyway, I just, like, that's all.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's an interesting, because, like, she's a good person too, and he ends up completely respecting her more, and like the Mute Master does more than like he respects Arabin or anything. So like she would have his support really if she took over Arabin's spot too. So he's smarter in the books we've read since this one was published. Like Queen of Shadows, he's smart. Even in the end of this book, he's smart. Like he orchestrates everything.
Yeah.
Not to and Assassin's Blade, he's not in Tower of Dawn or Empire of Storms.
No. But then too, like, I also really liked sort of I want to say call back, but call forward, I guess, to Throne of Glass. Like her and Chaol run all the time.
Yeah.
And like in this mini story, that's part of her training is like running so many miles in the desert, and like her being really dejected that she can't really do it without like dying.
Yeah.
And then like Ansel sort of being her cheerleader and being like, you can do it, like even if you get a little bit further tomorrow, that's a little bit further, like, and like maybe like to me is this part of why she finds the running so important. You know what I mean? Like, is this where she gets that sort of I need to run as part of my training mentality?
Yeah, especially since she struggles so hard here too.
Yeah.
And like obviously it's a lot of it's the conditions. It's not that she's completely out of shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah.
So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone and things might get saucy. So we're on week 5 of our tandem read of Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, and we're reading chapters 28 to 35 of Tower of Dawn and chapters 30 to 36 of Empire of Storms. Last week ended really not cliffhangery, but like suspensefully maybe.
Okay.
With Chaol and Yrene being like attacked in their room,
right,
and like something trying to go through the door that had the voice of not a man but not a woman but was a Valg and was attacking their door and about to come in, but then they hear guards right before the chapter ended, so it wasn't too suspenseful, but obviously not great. They're being attacked by Valg. Nesryn decides to fuck right off and respectfully fuck right off and go with Sartaq to visit his hearth mother. And she tells Chaol to not hold to any promises he may have made because she's not going to hold to any herself, so they can screw other people, basically.
Yeah, she respectfully told him through a note that he didn't even get the day she left. Cause
yeah, so he was like, oh my god, she's not safe.
He sent her a note being like, P.S. I'm not coming home tonight, and she didn't even get it because she was already gone.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't
Awkward.
I just find it odd, like, and I know I should have talked about this last week, but I didn't. How he's like, do you need a few minutes to go pack some stuff? And she's like, oh, I don't have anything. Bitch!
We did talk about this. It's so weird.
You have clothes!
We were like, not even a toothbrush, not even like a change of underwear.
I know, but
what about...
it's just weird that like, it's just weird that like she said, like, this is what I mean when I say I didn't really say anything, but like, one, yes, it's weird that she didn't pack anything. Like, he said he would wait for her.
Mm-hmm. But,
like, two, the fact that she said she didn't have anything. Like, bitch, I know you got a room full of clothes down there. You have things. Yeah. It's not like you don't own anything. You got lots of shit. Go pack some of it.
Yeah. I just am like, what does she end up doing? She can't have, like, no, is she borrowing sports bras off of Borte in this? Like, I know we're not there yet, but is she borrowing bras off of somebody?
But
because,
like, somebody must be giving her and fitting her out with all of her clothes.
And I get, like, a lot of the clothes is different because they're in, like, different climates and they're high up and blah, 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 blah. But, like, a bra.
An underwear.
A pair of underwear. An underwear.
One underwear.
One singular underwear.
Half a
You
leg.
could bring that shit.
Like one cheek.
Socks. You don't really need to borrow someone's socks.
Yeah.
I guess maybe. But they said that the boots were lined. Anyway, yeah, it's so weird. But it's just telling she's leaving everything behind.
Ugh.
And you're like, okay, metaphorical,
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah. Do you think authors think of this stuff when they write? Like, do you think SJM was like, even though she's got a room full of stuff, I'm gonna make her leave with nothing so that it's a metaphor for her, like, leaving her old life behind and sort of adopting this new life going forward? Like, do authors intentionally do that? I'm an English teacher, so, like, sometimes I feel like we overanalyze text to death and are like, what do you think the author meant by that? Like, do you think they ever just meant nothing by it?
Or just didn't
think of it?
Yeah, didn't think of the fact that she doesn't have any bras.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's odd. I can't imagine she didn't think of it. It had to be intentional, because it seems so ridiculous otherwise.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue your recap. Like, has nothing to do with this week's notes. It's just from last week.
Yeah. Yeah, so Aelin showed up at Skulls Bay, tricked Rolf, found out that Gavriel and Fenris are there, and they're all together as a big pile of fun.
Yeah.
And they were testing out Rolf's map last we saw them, and it works, because his barmaid went to go look at Lysandra and Adian when they had the amulet, which is a word key. Lorcan and Elide are with a carnival. I don't think there's a whole lot going on there. They made it across the river. I don't know if that was last week or the week before. I think that's everybody. Oh, Manon. Manon got attacked by a bloodhound, creepy, shapeshiftery creature
that
thing.
Can glamour themselves to.
Yeah.
Do you think they just have one form, like beautiful woman, or do you think they could shift into whatever? I think they can shift into whatever.
Is it like based on what they think would disarm their
opponent? Wonder. Because I do think they come up in the future, and they are a different shape.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's everybody.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
We're gonna say it is anyway.
So, we start with Tower of Dawn, chapter 28. And it starts in Chaol's point of view, and it picks up like exactly where we left off last week. So Caution shows up, and Chaol is grateful that he's there, because even though he was super like practical and ready last week when the attack was happening, he actually wasn't sure what he would have done if the Val got through. He wasn't sure if he'd be able to save Yrene. And he doesn't actually care about himself. He just cares about keeping her safe. So it's another moment of like, he hates himself. Caution asks them what happened, and Yrene lies and says that she was coming to give Chaol a tonic, and she says that like something attacked her and she came in then. And she tells him that she wants to stay there the night because she feels safe with Chaol, which is a big deal. Caution looks at Chaol then in like a don't take advantage of her, stay away from her kind of way. Yeah. And Chaol kind of feels like honored that Yrene feels safe with him, which is fun. He tells Yrene that Nesryn's bed is empty, and she's like, yeah, I know. That's the least of our worries now. But she actually asks if she can stay in his room because she doesn't want to be alone. And she says she'll stay on the floor, but he refuses. He says that he's not going to be able to sleep anyway because there's a Valg in the castle. So she sleeps in his bed. Yrene, like, they kind of just have a general conversation then, and Yrene asks what it's like to kill someone. Because, like, obviously she's a healer. And he says that he's new to it. And that he actually only took his first life just after Yule missed last year. And she's shocked because he's captain of the guard, as is everybody in the entire world. Since then, though, he's killed a shit ton of Valg. So, like, he's not super new to it.
No.
But he kind of looks at it differently, which I guess makes sense because, like, by killing the Valg, it's kind of a mercy to the host body that they're in to, like, save them. Because they don't know any other way to save them. Other than, I guess now they know about the ring.
Yeah.
Because that's how they saved Dorian.
Yeah, but they don't have the ring.
Yeah, so, and, like, they wouldn't be able to save literally every single person. That would probably take a while.
No, I really appreciate that Yrene brings up what we're all thinking. Like, just
what?
About Chaol not killing anyone, and us being like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, how did he get to be the Royal Guard the captain of the Royal Guard without killing anyone? And, like, she sort of brings that up. It's like, how did that happen? And I just really like that she voices what we've been saying forever.
Yeah, and like what we've said since we heard that it was that Cain was his first kill in Throne of Glass.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But yeah, so she then says that she actually took an oath in front of her mother when she was 7 to never take a life, which is, I guess, a common thing for healers to do, is take this oath. Mm-hmm. And she does tell him that even with that oath, she would have tried to kill whoever was coming after her tonight. And he tells her that he hopes she never has to use that dagger or any other, even if it is a mercy. And she thanks him for being willing to take that death upon himself, because, like, obviously he would have tried to kill the Valg.
Yeah, so she didn't have to.
Yeah. And he kind of feels, like, a bit of pride that, like, she would thank him for that. Because he thinks he used to feel a lot of shame for not having killed anybody and being captain of the guard. Which, like, kind of makes sense, because you think it's kind of, like, it's part of the job. But she actually makes him feel better about how few people he's killed. So, that's fun. Yrene says she's sorry Nesryn left, and he actually tells her that he promised Nesryn an adventure, and she deserves one, so he's glad that she kind of, like, is doing what she wants. And Yrene asks what he deserves, and he says nothing because he's squandered it all. Of course. Mm-hmm. So Yrene sleeps in the bed. He sleeps in his chair, but, like, barely sleeps. But in the morning, he actually goes to find where the guards train, and he asks to learn from them. And they teach him new things with modifications, and he thinks, like, nobody laughs at him because he can't do things. And after he did some training, he goes back to his room, and Yrene heals him for 6 hours in the darkness. And then he basically does the same thing the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So it's just like, it's leading us to a bit of a time jump for this couple. We go over to Empire of Storms chapter 30 now, and we're in Elide's point of view, and they're traveling with the carnival. But she hasn't had to be alone with Lorcan because, luckily for them, the ground is too wet for tents. So the women have been sleeping in the carriage, and the guys have just been, like, sleeping on whatever they can. Yeah. So she hasn't had to worry about, like, pretending they're having sex in their tent. They barely really talk to each other, and when they do, it's mostly about Morath, because obviously their deal was Elide would tell Lorcan about Morath. So this particular day, they're looking for wood, and he asks her about the dungeons, because she's told him everything else about Morath, except for, like, what's in the dungeons. And she just says that she doesn't know. But he says that her scent changed, so he knows that, like, she's not being entirely truthful. Which is interesting. I like that he can tell.
Yeah.
He then asks, like, who they keep down there, if it's, like, enemy soldiers, or, like, kind of trying to figure out if they could be allies. And she just says whoever they want to torture. And she asks if he's just going to abandon her. And she's like, I'm your wife. And, like, if he's just going to leave and what she's going to say to everybody. And he's like, well, you're already playing an oracle. What's another role? So he really doesn't care. She tells him then that the dungeons and the catacombs should actually be gone because of the blast. And he says that she had told him she was in the courtyard during the blast, so how could she know that? And she says that she's assuming. And he just presses on and asks her for the layout of like the North Dungeon. And she just tells him to figure it out himself. And we really go like into her head now. And kind of. But she's just like completely done with him. She's done with the question. She doesn't want to go into it. Obviously there's trauma there. We know there's trauma there. He doesn't. So she goes to walk away, but he like grabs her and says that they have a bargain. But she says they didn't specify when she had to tell him. And she'll take her time. And he tells her not to toy with him. But she says he can kill or hurt her. And he won't get any answers that way anyway. So like, she really starts to get in her feels. Like, not unsurprisingly. But he goes in to grab her and says that she'll tell him what he wants to know. And the stone in her pocket kind of thrums, which makes him step back because he can feel it. And he asks what she is. And she just says, I am nothing. And she starts to kind of spiral and think that, like, she's looking for Aelin and Adian and Selena, who is just one person who's not, like Aelin shouldn't be too hard to find because she's royal. People are looking out for her. But this Selena person, she has no idea who she is. She could be anywhere in the world. Like, it's going to be a struggle to find her. So she's, like, starting to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Lorcan asks her why she's looking for Aelin. And she kind of realizes that he knows her somehow based on the way he said it. And he also tells her that Selena is in the Queen's service. So if she finds Aelin, she'll find Selena. So, like, it's actually a tidbit of information that, like, is very helpful to Elide.
Yeah, he's... it's unfortunate because, like, he is helping her, but he's not being as obvious about it as we would hope he would be. You know what I mean? Like, because he knows Selena and Aelin are the same person. So we want him to tell Elide that, because she doesn't know that. So we're like, just tell her, don't keep it from her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I understand why he's keeping it. I don't want him to, but I get why he is. Like, he's still calling her fucking Marion. Like, she doesn't even know her real name. So, you know.
Yeah. And he also hates Aelin and doesn't really want her to have any allies. So.
Yeah.
But it's just shitty because, like, the way he's telling her this now because he wants some more information from her, she's like, oh, he's only giving me this information because he wants something in return. And she kind of starts wondering if, like, if she does find Aelin, will she, like, even want her around? And she just feels so abandoned and dejected, and, like, she hasn't had anyone comfort her in a very long time, because obviously, like, her mother died when Aelin almost died. Like, she hasn't had a great life. So she just walks away from him, and she notices that the tents are up, and she's like, fuck, and she just wishes that it would rain, which is just funny. We go over to Lorcan's point of view now, and he can kind of, like, he thinks to himself that, like, he has, like, dealt with enough soldiers and people and armies to know when you need to stop pushing people. And he can tell that by her smell, again, that she's kind of shifted into hopelessness, which is interesting. But he tells her that she will tell him about the dungeons when she's better, which is just an interesting phrasing. He's like, when you're feeling better, and she's just there, like, he's kind of saying it like this is like hopelessness is a sickness in her, which is just interesting.
Yeah, I think that his ability to smell emotions is very handy for him to have. Like, do all females have this ability, or is it just him?
Yeah, I don't know.
And, like, I understand that he's aware of how precarious her emotional state is. Like, he understands shit. Like, she has no hope right now. She's feeling hopeless. If I try and push her for the information, he's confident he could get it.
Yeah.
But, like, he also knows that, like, she wouldn't be able to come back from it. Like, she would never... It's another reason why, like, he knows she's hiding something. Like, he knows she's got something on her that she's keeping a secret.
Yeah.
But he hasn't attempted to get it from her to figure out what it is, because he knows that that's almost taking it a step too far. Like, he's already drawn a line. As quote-unquote terrible of a male as he assumes himself to be, like, he doesn't think he's a good guy at all. But for some reason, with Elide, there's a line that he's not willing to cross. And this is sort of, like, our first glimpse at, you know, like, he said he was willing to do whatever it took to get these Wookiees and destroy them because he loves Maeve and blah, blah, blah. But, like, to me, this is the first sort of glimpse we have of, like, he's not actually willing to do whatever it takes, because if he was, he would just betray her, like, he would destroy her, get the information he needed, and run away, but he's not doing that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because, like, in this point of view of his, we get, like, a few, I guess, hints of what's to come, and it's just kind of funny, because, like, there's this side, and then he starts thinking about, like, how love ruined Rowan later, and you're just like... it's just funny. Yeah. So, Umbriel comes over to them then and tells Marion, I put in quotation marks, that they'll finally have a night alone. Obviously, Marion and Lorcan, not Marion and Umbriel. And Lorcan just watches her face change, and, like, from her hopelessness to, like, she beams at him in front of Umbriel, and she, like, looks excited and happy.
Yeah.
And, like, it just, he does notice all of her, like, faking and her scheming and her, like, he is more observant than he says.
But also, like, he can see how talented she is.
Yeah.
That she can literally switch it on and off and, like, make it look completely believable. And, like, subtle things. Like,
yeah.
And he is, I think he's starting to be impressed with her.
Yeah, that's a really good word. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it all. So she goes to walk for the tent, and he's like, that's a small tent. Which, of course, it's funny. It's like the one-bed trope, but it's a tent.
But, like, I mean, we see the tent trope a lot, too, right? Like,
yeah.
That is... But it's just hilarious because all the Fae males are so big. They're so large. So, like, it's a small tent, but it's worse because he's such a huge person.
Well, like, I think he's 7 foot, isn't he?
No! He can't be 7 feet tall.
I believe he is.
How do you know? I don't think it ever has said that, has it?
The Throne of Glass wiki says that Rowan is 6'4", Gavriel 6'3", and Lorcan is the tallest at about 7 foot.
Oh my god! That's ginormous.
Yeah.
Like, and I know he's not a human, so, like, but, like, holy shit.
Yeah. There's, somebody also said that he's described as every inch as tall as Rowan. So he's likely 6'5". Like, I don't know how tall he is. But oh, Jesus. In Empire of Storms, he says that the ilken are only about a foot taller than him. And they're 8 feet tall, apparently. Anyway, it's mostly speculation based on how tall other things are. But they say around 7 feet, which is insane. I can't even imagine how tall. Like, how tall is Elide?
I don't know. I feel like she's not super short. Like, she's probably average girl height. Like, maybe 5'5", 5'6".
That's still, like, if he's 7
I
foot.
know, it's still insane.
Oh my god. It says 5'2".
Oh.
Or so. She's described as short, small, and delicate. And he's described as a actual monster. Anyway, so they go to the tent, and he says he'll sleep on the floor, but she's just like, what if someone comes in? And he's like, if somebody comes into our tent without permission, nobody will ever come into our tent again. And you're like, yeah, that's not surprising. He offers to get her a warm bath and keep watch and then have her clothes washed. And he thinks, like, those are creature comforts so that she'll trust him and, like, be more willing to talk to him. And she's just, like, she's a bit wary, but she also loves the idea of a bath. But she tells him that he should wash his clothes too, since it'll be good for the ruse if they're both naked. And he's just like, you're so young and I am very, very old. Like, not in a, like, they can't be together way, but in, like, a he knows things way. Like, and he's not, like, he doesn't care about being dirty. He's just like, you don't need to worry about this ruse or that kind of thing, is how I took it. But then he thinks to himself that, like, agreeing with her and letting her think that she's in control in this moment will also help make her feel better. So he says that he'll wash his clothes too. So he gets water for her bath, and he comes back to her rubbing her ankle, and he asks how much it hurts every day. And he thinks to himself that he braces it when he remembers to, which is not often. And you're like, you're kind of a good guy, but, like, not completely. But she just says that she learned to live with it. So he goes outside to keep watch, and he hears her undress, and he hears her hide something under the mattress. And I think this is actually the first moment that he realizes that it's something separate to her, because he keeps thinking that there's something going on with her as a person, as a thing, because he was like, what are you, when he felt the thrum of the stone. So I think this is the first time he's actually realizing that the stone is not a piece of her and is something separate.
Right.
But still, you'd think he would storm in there and check under the mattress and see what it is, but he doesn't, because he's drawn the lines. This is actually when he thinks of Rowan and his bitch queen and wonders if she'll bother with Marion at all, which is kind of the same thing that Elide was kind of worrying about earlier. But then he thinks, like, it's not his problem if Aelin doesn't care about Marion. And he doesn't have a conscience. And he thinks Rowan didn't either until love broke a perfectly good killing tool. And he's pissed about it. And he wonders if he's going to be pissed about it for centuries. And he also thinks, like, Aelin was dumb. She could have bartered Athrel's ring for an army, but she chose Rowan. And he thinks they deserve to perish together because, obviously, they fell in love.
Yeah.
And he hates them for it. And it's not like he's not jealous or anything. He's just like, what a silly emotion. What bunch of idiots.
Well, yeah, I guess in his mind, like, bartering for one person because you love them is a silly strategy in the grand scheme of what they're going to come up against.
Which I think we even said when we listened to, when we did that book, Airfire.
Yeah.
So, like, he's not wrong. She could have bartered for more. But also, it's the love story that we're here for.
Yeah.
So he actually ends up washing her clothes. He said that he would get Umbriel to do it, but Umbriel's dirty. Umbriel's busy.
Maybe she's dirty too.
Is busy making food. So he just washes her clothes himself.
How weird would it be to like, they don't really know these people. I just think it's so odd how he's like, maybe I'll give it, like, how it's like, let's give it to Umbriel to wash. And it's like, you don't know her and you're giving her your unmentionables. Like, it's just sort of like, I don't care if I was with a group of people. I would do my own laundry. Like, until I really got to know them, I wouldn't pass it off and be like, here you go.
I think the issue is they don't have they, like Nesryn, don't have any other clothes. So, I think the point was going to be he would give both of their clothes to Umbriel to wash for like a coin, and then they could have sexy times.
Oh, I guess.
But like actually pay them to do it,
Right.
like pay Umbriel to do it. But yeah,
It just
you wouldn't be able to do your clothes yourself.
It just seems so like, here, do my laundry, Umbriel. Like, it just seems so like high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's just so, like, you think at some point along these journeys they would have passed somewhere that they could have got a change of clothes. Like, why doesn't Lorcan have a change of clothes? Like, Elide had to leave in a fucking rush. We know that. But why doesn't Lorcan have clothes?
Because he's a fey male and he doesn't care about being dirty. And
He doesn't smell?
I guess he doesn't really hang out with people. Like, he never expected to be, like, traveling with other people.
Yeah, but it's been, like, at least a month. And he's just never he's just never cleaned his clothes?
See, do you know what? I know that this is not what's happening, but in my brain, all he does is if he notices he's starting to smell, he just sits in a stream and, like, watches himself with the clothes on.
You know what? That's fine. I'll take that.
And then he's washing himself and the clothes all at once.
Yeah, okay. I'll buy that. I'm just like, if you had only had one outfit, what if something started chafing?
You'd be fucked.
What if you got a hole in something? Like, it just seems wild. I can't imagine being like, I'm going on an adventure. One clothing.
Are you Bilbo Baggins?
Yes. He definitely brought clothes.
He did, yeah. He had a whole backpack.
Yeah.
But, like, think about it. Like, think about all of these fantasy shows.
Mm-hmm.
They have tiny little packs.
Yeah.
Like, what? You're going away for, like, 3 months. You're running. You're fighting. You're smelly. Like, deodorant definitely doesn't exist in these Fey worlds. So, like, I feel like maybe they're just used to everybody being stinky.
Maybe. We don't know what his magic does either. Maybe he just magics himself clean.
Could.
Then why does he wash her clothes?
Reese can do it.
Exactly.
Maybe he doesn't think that, like, maybe he doesn't want to deign to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't deserve for me to make you feel clean. Just dirty.
Gross. I don't think she thinks of him like that yet.
No, she doesn't.
So he washes her clothes and he brings her back food, and he actually brings her clothes from Molly to sleep in because her clothes is still going to be drying. And she starts talking about Morath again. She says her uncle is a commander in Morath and he locked her in a dungeon, and Lorcan's magic surges everywhere, and you're like, of course it fucking does, because who did this to you? And she continues and just says, like, his name is Vernon, and he's cruel and clever, and he'll use Lorcan for power if he's caught. And Lorcan asks if she wants him to kill Vernon for her. And she asks if there's a cost, but he says no. And he asks why Vernon locked her up. And she kind of says that she doesn't say that she has witch blood, but she says that Vernon wanted to see if his bloodline could be crossed with Valg. And Lorcan asks if he succeeded, and she says not with her, but with others. And she kind of implies that the explosion is, like, killed them all.
Yeah.
So he's like, so it wasn't an accident? And she's like, no. And then he asks if the ilken are what were bred from, like, Valg human.
Mm-hmm. Interactions.
Yeah, which was like putting a stone in a belly. So weird. But she says no, they're just like
made.
We know them. Yeah, we know them as like they were tortured basically and like kind of made into what they are.
Yeah.
Lorcan thinks about Maeve then and how she has to know about all this and how she wouldn't, like, if she did know about all of this shit, she wouldn't ally with this evil. And he's like, Doranel wouldn't survive it if, like, Morath put all of its forces on Maeve. So, then Lorcan asks if Elide has been locked up since her foot was injured, because that's kind of what she a bit implied. And she's like, no, the like ankle injury and the chains were from long before. And he's just like quietly like, what chain? Yeah. And she just says, when you kill my uncle, ask him yourself. And like throughout this entire scene, he's been like, he like looked at her lovely ankles and he saw like her like white
bare
pale skin and bare shoulders, and like he's been like sizing her up this entire time.
Woo!
Right? So we go over to Tower of Dawn now, chapters 29 to 31, and we're in Nesryn's point of view. And I think this whole part is in Nesryn's point of view. But they spend a day in a storm on the cliff because they can't fly in it. It's like freezing rain and awful. And they're basically just there freezing, huddled together with Kadara, like, blocking them.
Yeah.
And, like, it doesn't say anything about them, like, talking or cuddling or, like, any of the things that you would expect in a moment like this. Which I just... You know, it would have been fun for their relationship to progress because they had to snuggle. But she starts thinking of Aelin because she wishes she had fire. Yeah. And she wonders if, because obviously she's heard that Hussar says that she's unaccounted for. So she wonders, like, if Morath has her and her court, or if she's scheming somewhere. And she bets that she's scheming somewhere. And she prays that Aelin has more up her sleeve to win this war because it's looking dire. So they are able to travel again the next day, but then that night they have to camp out again in trees. And she realizes when she's camping with him that she doesn't really know Sartaq at all. And, like, he's being nice to her, but he's essentially a stranger, and she wonders if she was like too quick to agree to come, which is just kind of funny.
Yeah.
But they fly again the next day, and he like points out where the Dargan like are. So I guess that's where the steps are. It's kind of what I take from what they're talking about. But she asks if he ever visits there, but he says they're loyal to Caution and Tumaloon. But that also the Dargon and like the Rook Riders actually started out together, and they all used to be like a horse riding people, which are what the Dargon are. And then some of them took the Muniki horses and chased after and caught the Rooks and started flying them, and they became the Rookan people.
Right.
So like they all started out in the same, like, boiling pot.
So, yeah, I guess he's saying they have similar, like, sort of ideals.
Customs and, yeah.
And, like, loyalty and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and, like, they don't fight the exact same, but they're, like, pretty good at being able to fight together. So, like, the Dargan on the land and the Rookan in the sky. She asks then if he's ever been to war, and he says he hasn't, but he has been sent to dispatch territories and to remind them that they need to be loyal to the Khagan. So it's different than the war that is gonna be happening with the Valg, but he has gone out and, like, killed people.
Yeah.
We're assuming. But he does say that there are, like, rivalries in the clans of Rookan, and he has to, like, deal with that. And then he's like, I'm sure you're used to that because you work with the, like, guard or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm just lowly. Nobody else she doesn't climb the ranks. And she actually says, like, they don't like women or people from other places being high in power in Aelin. And you're like, yeah.
So what? Like so what? So real life?
Yeah. Yeah. So she stayed as a patrolman and wasn't able to go up the ranks. So Sartaq said that, like, he heard that they weren't open to people from other lands, and asks if she was ever ... like, we're assuming attacked, discriminated against, that kind of stuff. But she says that it's not worth talking about, and she calls him Your Highness. And he's like, I'm going to beg you not to call me that when we get to the hearth. Because apparently everybody makes fun of him for being a prince, which is fair. But he says he's simply Sartaq, or captain. And he kind of explains, so, like, he rules all 6 clans of the Rukin. But among his clan, he is the captain. And they all actually obey their hearth mother. So, like, as much as he might technically rule them all, he still, like, follows tradition and reports to his hearth mother, even though, like, his father, the king, has given him ruling over them.
Yeah.
So they get to, like, 3 mountain peaks that are together, and there are, like, caves and hallways and dwellings inside, and there are windows and stuff. And Nesryn thinks that there's, like, at least 100 different rooms in this place that people are staying, and that's just, like, with windows to the outside, nothing about the inside. So he says that their clan, Yrene clan, is the largest and the oldest, but he says all the clans say that they're the oldest, so they don't really know which one is. So they fly into the main, like, court cave room thing, and as they're, like, going in, Kadara has to, like, backpedal, so Nesryn, like, grabs Sartaq's knee because she's, like, afraid she's gonna fall off. And he basically says, like, he finally found her weakness, and laughs, and she says that she'll find his, and he just kind of laughs. And it's funny because I think I know what his weakness is.
Wow.
And it's just cute.
Well, if we think they're gonna get together, which is sort of our hope, then, you know, it's sort of a, oh, what if it's her?
Yeah. And we'll come back to this at some point. So yeah, she sees, like, in the middle of this giant room, there's a hearth, and, like, people are just standing around looking at them. So I guess this is where, like, most people come when they arrive. But there's a bunch of people waiting for them. And somebody named Borte says, look who gave up his comforts to come back. And they, like, just tease each other, him and Borte is a female, and Sartaq. And Sartaq jumps down and tries to help Nesryn down, but she sees judgment in everybody's eyes, and she's really used to it, obviously being in Aelin. But she just assumes it's, like, because of who she is. She doesn't assume, she can't imagine that anybody would, like, see good in her. So she's always taking everything negatively, which obviously is not surprising. So she jumps down on her own, and Borte says she's a Balruni woman in the leathers of a Rukin, and that's a sight to see. And then Nesryn teases Sartaq to kind of, like, make Borte laugh and, like, get accepted by her, which, like, I guess it is punching up, but I was just like, this, I don't know, it's weird to tease, like.
Well, I guess she saw sort of the way Borte was with Sartaq, and saw how, like, everybody, like, took that as commonplace. Mm-hmm. So, you know, sort of, I guess, joined in on it in a form of, you know, to gain acceptance.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the structure of the routine and this sort of group of people, it's really hard to remember who he is. Like, it's really hard to remember that he is, like, one of the top choices to be future Kagan.
Yeah, and it's, like, we get a tiny bit more here that Borte is the granddaughter of the Hearth Mother. So she's actually heir to become the Hearth Mother. Yeah. And then if she's the Hearth Mother and he's the captain, she still has like say over him, even though he technically outranks her. Like traditionally he's supposed to do kind of what she says. Yeah. So it is a very complicated structure anyway.
I think he outranks her as a prince, but not as a member of the group.
Yeah, but like as a prince, he's been given control of all of the clans of Rukin. So like he outranks her
for that
in both ways. Yeah, but like he could ignore all of the Hearth Mothers and force all the Rukin to do because he's like the prince and rules them.
But I guess what I mean is like according to the Khaganate, he is in charge.
Yeah.
But according to all the clans and all the Hearth Mothers, he's not in charge.
Well, the Hearth Mothers are in charge of their own.
Yeah, but yeah. But you know,
I do still think like if he was like, we're all going to war, they'd all have to go.
I guess, yeah. But he wouldn't. I still think he would need the support of his Hearth Mother in order, like, to get the support of the Rukin to go. Like, I think if he said, we're all going to war, and his Hearth Mother and Borte were like, we don't want to, I think he wouldn't garner as much support as if he did have their approval.
Yeah, but I think that there would be consequences from his father then. Like, I don't think it would just be as easy. Like, there'd be a bad internal fighting then, I think. Because, like, his father expects him to control them all, basically. Yeah. Like, that's why he's there. That's his job. Yeah. So he obviously introduces Nesryn to Borte, and Borte asks if she's emissary or bride, which is just kind of funny. And everyone's like shocked that she suggested that. And Borte actually, that she would be so bold to suggest that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But Borte tells Nesryn to be careful around here, or another woman might throw her off of the mountain because they want to get with Sartaq, basically.
We've heard he's a handsome man.
Oh, we have. Just like every man in this book.
That's true, yeah. All of our main men are like, handsome?
Very handsome. So Nesryn asks if Borte will be there, like, trying to shove her off, too. And she's like, ew, no, we're siblings. And we're like, okay, good. Borte's not trying to get in the middle of this. So Sartaq brings her over to the fire, and she just sits down to warm up, and he unpacks everything. And Nesryn notices a man in his 40s sitting near the fire who looks completely out of place. And he actually looks like he could be from Aelin. And he's apparently been a guest of the Hearth Mother for a few weeks. And he asks about Nesryn being the captain. And she kind of feels his judgment because she's obviously not, like, native to Aelin. And he's like, how can you be the captain? But he just says he's a merchant and his name is Falcon Anar. And she asks if he has any news, but he says he's been in the southern continent for 2 years and she likely has more news than him. He does say that when he left, Lord Westfall was the captain, and he asks if she's his replacement. And she says that she is now hand to King Dorian. And he's shocked that Dorian is the king. And if you haven't read Kingdom of Ash, maybe skip ahead like 30 seconds. But I just find it super funny that she's like, King Dorian Havalier. And he's like, oh my god, the sun is the king. Yeah, so Borte cuts in and like just takes Nesryn away to go get a bath and eat. And she calls Falcon an odd man, and she's not sure why her grandmother let him come here. And Borte says she could tell Nesryn didn't really trust him either, and they just talk a bit, and Borte teases her about her braid and how it was so shitty, and she brings her to the bath. And Borte asks...
She is.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Borte asks if she grew up in Aelin, and Nesryn says yes. and Borte just says, then welcome home. And it's not really what Nesryn was expecting from her, so it just feels really nice for someone to say that. So she, I guess, goes and gets her bath, but then she meets Sartaq for food, and he says that his hearth mother is away and won't be back for a day or two. But Nesryn is like, that's fine. Like, Chaol needs some more time to heal, so it's okay if we're delayed a day or two, but, like, we still need to get going sooner than later.
Really, it can only be a couple of days.
Yeah. So he offers her a tour tomorrow and says that they'll try some archery practice. And he says that he's keen to match himself against Neith's arrow and that the others will be too. And he says that he's actually told, I guess, the other people here stories of her. And he says that's why so many people were there waiting for them, because he actually sent word the day before he left saying that she was going to come. So he was cocky and confident that she'd go.
But he also almost left without her.
I know. So like, if she didn't go up, like was he looking for her?
He didn't even tell her he was going. It was just like, changed.
I know.
Out. So like,
that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, was he looking for her when, like, she walked up there and he was around looking for her, and then he was like, there she is. Because, like, she was in the city looking for Valg. Was he just going to scour the entire city till he found her?
I don't know.
And just pick her up in the Rook's claws and go? Like,
that is kidnapping. Sorry, not kidnapping.
It is kidnapping.
It's not a child. Abduction.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, so he's a cocky prince, but we love them cocky, I guess. Most of them are, so you know. So Nesryn and Sartaq go with Kadara the next morning to get her breakfast, and he explains how they like train children on the Rook when they're really young, and how he also explains like how the first Coggin ended up taking over this land. So because I guess they had engineers that could make weapons out of anything, they traveled light and they were fast over the land, I guess, with the Doggin. And they were just better, and they surprised them. And he also says that like the first Coggin that ended up taking over, he like made, what is the word? No. He made an example of the people that
wouldn't bow to him.
Yeah. And then when other places heard about that, they would automatically just bow to him, and he would pay them well. And like that makes Sartaq be like, the king of Aelin really did a really poor job of like taking over, because he just pissed people off, and that's how you get like uprisings and shit.
Yeah.
He's like, he could have learned something from this. We do also get that the Coggin traditionally has two Sulda, I think. One that has white horsehair, which means peace, and one that has black horsehair, which means they're in a time of war. So that's just interesting.
I understand why they think that about the King of Aelin, but at the same time, it's a vow. So, like, they don't really care if they...
Well, yeah, they're there for the mischief.
Yeah, they don't really care if they piss people off. Like, they don't want to make, like, a ruling empire where people are happy. They delight in the pain and suffering.
Like, feed off of it. So, yeah, you're right.
But, like, it's funny because the Southern Continent is seen as this, like, amazing, peaceful place where all these different cultures and identities, everybody gets along because the Coggin, like, declares it that way. But at the same time, like, dude was a conqueror, like...
Yeah. And, like, still puts down places that oppose him at all.
Yeah,
so, like
it's not great. It's good if you go with the flow and you, like, agree, but if you don't, you're shit out of luck.
Well, that's like last week we were talking about the servants, and it's like, if they're, like, being coerced into having sex because they want power, is that really consent.
No.
And it's like, they're not slaves anymore, but like they're still not being treated amazingly.
No, it's like, can you imagine, it's like, it just, like, imagine you're getting paid as a servant, it's fine, but then you're like, oh, little Johnny needs braces, I guess I'll go have sex now to get some more money.
Yeah. Like, you know. So, yeah.
I don't know if braces,
there are just some things that
braces, you will, but it was
they probably just magically fix the teeth.
Because...
Yeah. It just seems like we hear some things and we're like, that doesn't sound as great as they're telling us.
No, exactly. They're making it sound very idyllic when it's not actually ideal.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess, so, like, we are all conquerors everywhere.
Really. Well, exactly, yes. Like, I guess it's a metaphor for the real world of, like, we're all shitty.
Yeah.
So on that note, Nesryn says she doesn't really understand why Erewhon is doing what he's doing. Like, he already has control of the northern continent. He could just, like, attack other places. He could do, but, like, what is his motive right now? Because, like, she just doesn't get it. And it's kind of connected to something that came up last week. We do get his motive soon, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I assume it's in this book, but I don't think it's in Empire Storms. But anyway, they go back and Sartaq takes her on the tour and they end up in the training ring, which is on top of the mountain. And the mountains just kind of remind me of ACOTAR a little bit. Like, the training ring's on top. There's 3 mountains with peaks that they live in. And, like, it's just like, interesting. We also hear there is a 4th mountain there where they actually bury their dead. And it's, like, in the distance, but they can see it. And all of their Sulda are just, like, in the mountain as, like, I guess, grave placers. She asks if he'll be laid to rest there someday or if he'll be laid at the steps with his family. And he kind of says that that's a choice that lays ahead of him. And it's, like, really his character's defining conflict in the book is, like, is he a prince that could become Coggin, or is he a captain of the Rook that is going to stay with his clan? So, like, it's just setting that up.
When did he move there? When he was, what, 12?
Yeah, his father forced him to stay there. I thought he was 8 or 12 or something.
I thought he said he was 12 and that's when he stole the, like, captain.
Makes sense.
But then, like, how long was he there?
Like, how old is he?
Well, I guess, like, I'm just wondering how long he was forced to stay there until he had to return to his, like,
Well, I think his princely duties just became this. So I think his father was like, I need one of them to do this. I'll leave this kid here until he can do it.
It's just, like, it's just funny because I kind of feel for him. Because, like, yeah, it's his family. And by all accounts, like, his dad doesn't seem like a bad guy.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, his dad seems like an alright guy. It just... And I'm sure when him and his siblings were small, they probably got along. Like, you know, it seems like there is some affection in the family that is sort of, as they've gotten older, they've gotten more sort of conniving.
Yeah, I guess when they started realizing that it was a reality that one of them was going to fuck over the rest of them. So then they go to, like, the archery circuit, and Borte is there, and she's like, what do you got? Because obviously she's heard the stories. So Nesryn picks up a bow and some arrows and asks Borte to pick a mark, and she picks neck, heart, and head, and she points to a different dummy as she says each one. So then Nesryn shoots each dummy, but instead of shooting, like, each one once, she shoots each one 3 times and hits, like, their neck, heart, and head of each one each time. And I guess, like, she stays in the one position, so it's like each time she aims, she has to calculate different things based on the wind because they're outside and the angle and all that crap. So, like, it's just showing that she's really good. I didn't find it super impressive in the way it was written.
I mean,
you know
she
what I mean?
hit targets that weren't moving.
Yeah, but like everybody there is super impressed, but I was like, oh, okay.
It's like, that was it?
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, Borte is like, show me. So basically they stand around and like she teaches people and they like, she learns stuff from them and they like do shit together. It's good times. Mm-hmm. Learning. And then a messenger comes and says that the Hearth Mother is back. So Nesryn and Sartaq go to meet her. And Nesryn asks about Borte's training. Because she is like heir to the Hearth Mother, but she's also training with the others. And he says that she also does like other training. Like she learns history and languages. And she does like secret training that he doesn't even know about. So it'd be interesting to get some more information on that. Like, I'd have a book from her point of view.
Mm-hmm. And especially about her future.
Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. There's so much we could go into here.
Yeah.
So Nesryn asks where Borte's mother is, and Sartaq just says that she's dead and that her father was never around. So that's sad, but we really don't get any more information on it. Sartaq kind of like switches topics now, and he calls her a good teacher, and he also says she's as good as the legends, but he was worried that she wouldn't be because they left out key information. And she's like what? And he's like, about how beautiful you are.
Oh, I hate it.
He's such a flirt. It's kind of funny, but also like, oh man. So she meets the Hearth Mother then, whose name is Hulun, I think. But tells her to call her Ej, I think it is, which it means mother. So obviously Nesryn and Sartaq are there, and Falcon shows up, and Sartaq says that like he wants to have private meeting with Ej.
Essentially, not so nicely, Falcon get lost.
Exactly, basically. But she says that first they need to listen. And like obviously everybody listens to her, so he's like, fine. But she tells them all that there's an ancient malice stirring in the mountains, and that rook nests are being pillaged, and eggs and hatchlings are being stolen. And she says it isn't poachers, but something worse. And she says that they're called Karen Kui, which means shadows/darkness, I guess. But Falcon then explains that in their land, they're called Stygian spiders.
Oh, no.
We've met them before.
We have met them before. Those were the Stygian spiders, actually, is how Manon got spider silk for Abraxas's wings. And then she made a deal with the Stygian spider to give her so much silk, and then instead of paying her, I think she had to pay for her beauty, is what she had to pay with.
They were debating it. Yeah.
And then instead of payment, Manon, killed her by getting her to crawl off a ledge. So
I don't think she dies.
But I think the assumption is that she dies. Isn't it? That was the assumption I made.
I didn't, but only because it's this spider that she was talking to took the 20 years off of the shapeshifter's life.
Right.
It was the same spider. So if that spider had died.
Right. But we don't know it's the same spider.
Yeah, because she said she was.
Oh.
When she was talking to Manon, she was like, I wonder if when magic comes back, I'll be able to change. I took 20 years off of a shapeshifter's life.
Oh. Oh, well, shit.
So, Nesryn says that the Stygian spiders are a myth, which I think is interesting, because, nobody else thought that they were a myth, but I guess...
She's seen so much shit, too.
Why
would you think that these guys are a myth when with all the shit you've seen?
The wyvern, all
yeah.
it's just interesting. But yeah, so Falcon hauls out spider silk and he tells them about his deal that he made to get the spider silk. He gave away 20 years and he looks like he's about 50, but he's actually only 27. So it's the same man from the story in Assassin's Blade.
Right, the assassin and the desert.
Yes, and the dessert. Sorry, I had to. So what timing we have in our reading. But Nesryn asks if he's here for Karen Kui silk, but Edge says that they are less civilized and the Karen Kui only destroy, and they've actually kept their distance from each other, so it's weird that they're now attacking the Rook. So there's something going on. Sartaq asks why she thinks it's them, and she says that she doesn't believe in coincidence, and like a man is coming to ask about them, and all of this is happening at the same time, like the Rook are being stolen. So she's like, she's kind of making
connecting
an assumption.
dots that may or may not be there.
Yeah. So Sartaq kind of looks at Falcon and he's like, well, did you go see them? Like, are you the reason that they're stirring? And Falcon's like, no, I came to talk to
Edge first.
Yeah, before, like, to get her, because she's super knowledgeable and everybody knows that she knows stories and stuff. So, like, he wanted her information before he went to go see them. And we basically get, like, he's trying to get his youth back, even though he did sell the silk that he traded for. So, like,
it was a fair trade.
He made the deal. Yeah. You know.
He should have been more clear, because his issue is that he traded for that spider silk 20 years of his life, thinking that it would just mean he would die 20 years early, when really the spider used her magic to age him up, so he lost 20 years of youth. Should have been more specific in his deal.
Oh, 100%.
You're bad, dude. I'm not on his side.
And also, he knows how to get it back. He has to kill
the spider he made the deal with.
Yeah, so I don't know why.
Why are you here in the southern continent? Go back to the north, find the same spider, kill her already.
Yeah, I really don't get it.
I feel like it's just a very convoluted way to give them an ally and to give them information.
Yeah, and to, like, get this part of the story. Anyway, it's something. So yeah. Basically, Edge orders Sartaq then to go after the Karen Kui the next time that they steal some babies. Because they need to know for sure that it's actually the Karen Kui. Because she does recognize that she's kind of making some assumptions here.
Yeah, and they don't want to, like, disturb the peace if the Karen Kui are not actually doing anything wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, if they go out guns a-blazing and then the Karen Kui are like, we've been minding our business. And she also tells Falcon that he can go with them to look for answers when they go see the Karen Kui. And then she dismisses him. And we also get, apparently, the Karen Kui and the Rook used to be enemies. And they actually used to fight before the Rook got riders. So, I guess that's interesting.
It's holdover, like, resentment? Animosity. Animosity is a better word.
Yeah, but it's also interesting because I'm like, what are the Rook? Because we get a tiny bit more, I think it's here in a little bit. But anyway, so the Edge looks to Nesryn and says it's starting anew. The one who sleeps has awoken. And Nesryn just says Erewhon. And Edge says that Nesryn has faced his shadow beasts and asks if Sartaq's father knows. So Edge is, like, super perceptive, and she, like, realizes what's on the go. And Sartaq answers that, like, his father knows some, but he's dealing with a lot of grief right now, and obviously also his wife is in a bad spot, so it's not great. But he does say that there was an attack at the Torre that they can likely trace back to the same shadow beasts, as she called them. And the Edge then asks if he's come to empty out the Eyrie to fight in the north. and never return. And Nesryn kind of realizes that Sartaq is actually here to win over his people to go to war. Like, that is his plan. So it's just, he's already decided, but he hasn't told her he's already decided. It's just interesting.
Yeah. He's on their team.
Yeah. Even though, like, then you're like, is he going to go against his father, too? Like,
yeah.
There's a lot happening here. So he asks what Edge knows and why they have information when the war never actually came to this land. Like, the war with Erewhon was never really in the southern continent. And she just says, like, she needs to eat and rest first, but tells him to prepare everyone because as she was coming back, there's a storm coming. So he needs to go around and tell people. Basically, he says he'll take outside and Nesryn will take inside. So she, like, just walks around the entire place and tells people that there's a storm coming. And, like, she meets people everywhere and they're super nice to her and they say welcome home and they give her food and tea and it's just really sweet.
Yeah, and she has, like, a purpose and, like, I think she said something along the lines of, like, when she's going around telling people that Edge says there's a storm coming, nobody sort of gives her a weird look like, why are you doing this? Like, who are you to tell us? They're just like, oh, storm. Kate, got it. Thanks. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they're not questioning her, her place.
Yeah. Yeah. We also get that Edge is a story keeper with a capital S and K. And I guess we had another story keeper in Heir of Fire. What's his name? Completely forget.
Yes, the old man.
The cook guy. The cook man.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Anyway.
I feel like a terrible person. He was so nice.
He was
and
so nice.
He had that, like, he was half Fae and he had that Fae lover who loved him.
Yeah, it was super protective.
It wasn't like Elias or anything, was it?
Maybe. Emrys. Yes.
We got there.
We did. So yeah, I just find it interesting, the story keeper narrative, and like, we'll probably get into it. I think it's later this week. But at one point they say like they have a collective.
Yeah, it's like a magical process. It's not just, hey, study these stories and you're the one that's going to tell them. Like, no, like, it's a magical thing of you're almost given the hive mind and you have to, like, dive into it to recollect the story and it, like, takes time. It's really cool.
It's wild. It is so cool. Yeah, I just found it super, like, I didn't realize that in Heir of Fire. I just thought, like, he knows many stories. Yeah. You know? But it's cool to figure this out. So, I guess after she's told everyone about the storm, they're sitting together, and Edge tells them that long ago, before mortals ever lived here, a rip opened in the world in these mountains, and Nesryn thinks a word gate. And the Karen Quee and other beasts of shadow entered. Most left and went to, I guess, the north to fight in the war with Erewhon, but the Stygian spiders stayed to guard the way home. So that's interesting.
So is that who the Karen Quee became? Like those spiders that stayed to guard the gate?
Is that what they became?
Well, because they're Karen Quee, but they're Stygian spiders, like, are they the same? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're saying the Stygian spiders stayed to guard the gate, so is that what the Karen Quee are now? Like,
so I think they're just the same thing with different names and in different places. But I don't know for sure that the Stygian spiders necessarily, I don't want to say they don't know their past, that we find out later. Like, I don't know if they have that same connection or if they're just like offspring that were like, we don't want to do what our parents do. Or if there were just different kinds of these spiders and they all came across different times and like only the Karen Quee are what they end up being that we figure out. I don't know. Many questions. Edge kind of gets into like what we know, that there was a war with 3 demon kings and a Fae queen, and demons pass through a door to conquer. So, like, she... Basically, the book says... She tells the story that we all know.
Yeah.
And Nesryn's like, shit, so that means the spiders are actually Valg, which is a revelation.
Is it though? It is.
Yeah, we didn't know.
I know we didn't know before, but, like, to me it's not a huge leap.
I know, but, like, the wyverns aren't, and the rook aren't. Like, there's other
Wyverns
animals.
Wyverns are
Are they Valg?
born of. Yeah.
I thought they were just, like, made.
Yeah, like the by Erewhon.
But, like, they've been the sign of the king. Like, they've been the sign of Aelin since before the king was possessed. Like, I don't think they're a creature that was Valg like the spiders are. Like, I think maybe he created them because they were the sign of his house before.
Maybe.
I don't know. We need more information.
Yeah.
I need more from these books. So Edge says that the Fae came here to actually teach the Rook to fight the Karen Quee, and they set up watchtowers, and she's not sure if they did all that because they were afraid that the Rip was going to open again, or, like, why. So we really don't have any information. Sartaq asks if there's a way to defeat the Valg, and Edge says that he should ask Nesryn. But she just says that she can't tell them, and she thinks to herself she can't mention the keys or the gates. And if Morath hears there's a sliver of hope, then basically they're screwed. And Sartaq is understandably annoyed that she won't tell him what's on the go.
Yeah, but, like, I also feel like he has made it seem like he's close-ish. And he wants to get closer, and she's sort of keeping up that barrier.
Yeah. And, like, also, she can't just tell them everything. They could easily decide to go be on the Valg side. Like,
yeah.
If they think that, like, Aelin is a threat, the Coggin might be like, we're gonna fight Aelin with the Valg. So, yeah. So the Edge tells them that next time, or that tomorrow, basically, they should check the watchtowers. There's one that's a day and a half away, but they are also, of course, rigged with traps, so nobody has actually, like, successfully checked there, because everybody ends up dying. So it's like, this is so dangerous.
Yeah. Like, these watchtowers are, like, thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Which
and it's
is...
like Indiana Jones style.
Yeah, and it's just funny. It's just funny, because when I read through the next section and it talks about the watchtowers, I must have, like, skirted around this part where she was talking about the watchtowers. Like, I just didn't pay enough attention. Because when we got to the watchtowers, I was like, why are these watchtowers so abandoned?
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, oh, because they're thousands of years old.
Yeah. Which is funny, like, when you actually get there, because it's like, they don't seem that old. But the stories.
Yeah.
So now we jump back over to Empire of Storms, chapter 31, and it's in Aelin's point of view. And she thinks, like, at least they know Rolf's map works, and she wonders if there was a difference between the word key and what, like, the Valg rings look like. So she kind of wonders what came up on the map for the Valg key. But I don't think we ever find out. So It's just kind of funny. So Aelin and Rowan break into Gavriel and Fenris's room, and they're just sitting there expecting them. And Fenris is like, he enjoys how dramatic she is, that she decided they had to break in instead of knocking on the door, which they easily could have also done. But Gavriel is pissed that they expect them to give them information on Maeve, but won't let him see his son. But she obviously just says, like, she isn't denying him anything. It's Adian's decision if he wants to see him or not.
Yeah.
And she says that she doesn't care, which is obviously a lie. Like, she's obviously invested. Fenris then says, it must be hard to care with a mortal lifespan. And then he asks if she's going to settle soon. And, like, I think this came up already in this book or a previous book. And it's like, she's 12. She's not 12, I know, but that's my go-to for when people are young, especially watching the Olympics. I'm like, oh my God, they're 12. Anyway, but how would she know if she's going to settle? Why does everyone keep throwing the settling in her face? Like, we don't know yet. She's still a baby.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say she's going, like, I don't know, I don't think she would normally settle, is the thing, right? Because she's human.
Yeah.
She's born of human parents, like, really, her ancestors are Fae, but, like, she doesn't have any close relatives that are Fae, but she's inherited all this power, so I think the assumption is that she won't, because, you know, she's so human, but at the same time she's not, because she has all this huge amount of power, so, like, it's a really big question.
Yeah, which is fair, but, like, we're gonna find out sooner than later. Like, it's, like, probably a matter of years, really, so, like, I don't know. It's just, I'm like, nobody knows. Why do we keep throwing this in her face? But I guess to get her off balance and whatever.
Well,
so anyway.
and to hurt, right? Because everyone sees what her and Rowan are to each other. The idea that she's going to age and die is...
And leave him again.
Is rude.
Is rude. It is rude. So, yeah, Rowan says it isn't their concern. And we kind of get in Aelin's head that, like, apparently settling is, like, a rough process. And, like, basically painful. And some Demi-Fae, like Lorcan, and possibly Aelin settle, but they don't know yet if she will. She then says, like, there's already an immortal queen, so it would be nothing new if she does settle. And Fenris asks if she plans to collect blood-sworn males or just keep Rowan. And she says, like, he wasn't interested in her when she was in Mistward, obviously, because everyone went past her and it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
But Gavriel then says, like, Fenris is the one that initially volunteered to train her. So that's just an interesting tidbit.
But at the same time, it means nothing when it comes to the fact that everybody just ran on by her to save Rowan. Just because he was like, I'll train her, and Maeve was like, no, keep it in your pants. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't to me, that has no bearing on the fact that he still ran right by her and didn't give a shit.
I know, but I also am like, the whole point is he wanted to train her because he wanted to get away from Maeve for a bit, which is awful because Maeve is so awful to him, we learn kind of later. But I just didn't find it that bad that they ran past her. I was like, yeah, of course they're going for Rowan. They've been with him for hundreds of years. Like, he actually has their, like, loyalty. She doesn't have any of that yet, so why would they go to her first?
Yeah.
But anyway, she asks why he wanted to train her, because she's, like, really surprised by this, and he says it would get him out of Dornell. And they would have had far more fun than she did with Rowan. And Rowan says that they would have just stayed on the rooftop and drank themselves to death. And I'm like, I would have read that story too.
Yep, me too.
So Aelin goes on to ask about Maeve, and Gavriel says, like, they can't say much. And she asks, like, how Maeve's bond works. And because she says, like, she struggles to control Rowan. Like, she can suggest shit, but he's taking, like, the court and her best interests at heart as, like, his primary, and if she orders him to do something that goes against that, he can kind of ignore it. But they basically tell her that Maeve took the oath with control in mind, so that is the main thing that she wanted from these males. And when Aelin and Rowan did their oath, it was with love. So it's, I know, it's like, I get it. So that's why hers is not as controlling, which is good, because if she had that control over him, it would be a very non-consensual relationship. The dynamic would be bad.
Yep.
But she actually thinks of the love that she felt at that time and how it's so powerful. There are no words to describe it. And you're like, God, the signs. So Aelin asks if they can actually break the bond on their own and to Maeve, and they say that they would end up dying. And Fenris asks why she's asking all these questions, and she just says, oh, no reason, I just got distracted. But she's actually thinking of Aedion and any claim that Maeve might have on him and how he could get out of it. Aelin tells them that they know that Maeve is sailing to Eelway, and they are currently her allies. So Gabrielle and Fenris are currently working with her, but she may end up in direct conflict with Maeve. And Fenris says, like, she may be sailing to attack Morath's fleets. But Aelin says, like, the loss of lives would be catastrophic. And Fenris is just like, she doesn't care about Fae lives. Like, it doesn't matter to her if they die.
Yeah.
And Aelin asks them if Maeve, like, ordered them to get the keys and the ring too. And Fenris just asks if she's gonna kill them if they try to do that kind of thing. Like, he doesn't really confirm or deny. He's just like, are you gonna end up killing us? Gabrielle then says that Rolf is getting fire lances. He's, like, put in a huge order for them. And just giving them information, which is nice of him. I don't really, like, he's just playing nice because he wants to see his son. But they're obviously hopeful that Rolf is going to join them. And they just leave the room then. And Aelin thinks, like, she knows what they have to do. And that there are two monarchs who have ruled and schemed longer than most kingdoms existed. So they need to be really smart in, like, how they go forward. And she says seeing the cadre makes her realize how close they were to being separated. So then Rowan says, and I'm going to read it because it's kind of one of those quotes of their love, which makes you want to vomit. But he said, even if Maeve had kept me enslaved, I would have fought her every day, every hour, every breath. I would have fought for the rest of my life to find a way to return to you again. I knew at the moment you emerged from the Valg's darkness and smiled at me through your flames. And it's just, like, so sweet. Like, they love each other so much. And then she says he was willing back then with so few benefits. And obviously we're talking about sexual benefits here. And he says he feels the same now as he did then. He just couldn't act on it because obviously he was part of Maeve's cadre then. And he kisses her and says, even when she's in another kingdom, she is his blood and his mouth. Whatever. And she then asks if he'll take her against a chimney for the first time, since he said that he wasn't going to take her against a tree. And they kiss. And we're like, where's the sex?
Yeah. We need it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we head on back to Tower of Dawn now for chapter 32. And we're back with Yrene and Chaol. And they're working out his legs. Ooh. Not like that. She's just, I feel, when I think of it, all I can think of is, you've ever, like, had a baby or been around a baby, then, like,
oh,
and they do little bicycle kicks, you do little bicycle kicks with their little legs?
Yeah.
This is what I imagined, except with a fully grown adult.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But you were just like, if you've ever had a baby. And I was like, obviously you know I haven't.
No, I mean, like, had a baby in your possession.
In your presence.
Yeah.
In your possession. True. Yes.
Anyway. So, like, it's been a few days, and they were working out at the Torre today. Chaol had actually gone to train with the soldiers that morning. And he wanted to take a ride with Yrene through the city, so they did. And every day Yrene beat back the darkness in his spine a little bit more, chipping away at the darkness, like forcing it to retreat. So, like, sort of like a little training montage almost in book form.
Mm-hmm.
And she mentions that she did some research. And 2 healers have actually done things to help paralyze people if the magic doesn't work. So I think she's trying to come up with alternate scenarios just in case, like, what they're doing doesn't fix it. So,
yeah.
One person made a magic exoskeleton that the person could use to walk. But it's fueled by, like, this magic talisman that they didn't have. So that's sort of out of the question. And then she said the other one fused a specific magic shard into the person's brain. So, like, they have options.
Yeah, if they can figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. But, like, I guess she's doing this research because she feels like he's anxious to return to Aelin.
Mm-hmm. And she is too, though.
She is too, yes. But, like, she feels like it's going really slowly and he really wants to go back. And he is, but he said he's not going to rush her and no one's going to hurt her no matter how long she takes to heal him. Sort of referencing the attack on the door from, I think it's from last week, right?
Yeah, at the very end of last
week. With the Valg, like, whispering, Elaine, Yrene.
I know it. Yeah. Too many people.
Yeah. Anyway, so Cashin has still not found the attacker, and that sort of has her on edge. But she decides they need to visit the library again and see how the scrolls ended up in the Tory in the first place. Because, like, again, in their minds, there haven't been Valg. Like, obviously, Sartaq and Nesryn are figuring stuff out in their end and learning things. But all those things, Chaol and Yrene don't know. So they're not aware of any sort of Valg on their continent. So they're like, why is this information here?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question.
It is a good question. And one I think they should heavily pursue. Q.
They're too busy pursuing each other.
They're too busy. Ew. So Q to them talking to the librarian. And she says there are no records as to why the information is there. However, there are caves that the scrolls came from that may have the information there. The closest one is the Ascara Oasis. So they could try there. But Yrene tells Chaol after they leave the library that particular oasis is actually owned by the Kogan. Kogan?
Yeah, it seems like everything is, though.
Yeah, but, like, this is, like, sort of their private getaway.
Yeah.
It's, like, their private resort island thing to get away.
Yeah.
So, like, they can't actually go without permission of a royal. And they don't really want to ask outright if they can go see it, because that'll sort of put suspicions on them. It'll be like, well, why do you want to go see it?
Yeah.
So,
makes sense.
It's just too suspicious for them to go up and be like, hey, so we heard you have an oasis. We'd love to check it out.
But their plan later on is not suspicious at all.
Chaol actually does suggest using one of Irene's royal connections.
Yeah.
But, like, everything that's happened with Hasar, like, sort of blackmailing her, she doesn't really feel comfortable asking Hasar, and she also doesn't want to ask Caution because if she asks him for a romantic getaway, he would get ideas, obviously.
Of course.
And she doesn't want to give him ideas. So Chaol then sort of apologizes for bringing all of this on her. But she sort of just says, like, you have nothing to be sorry for. I mean, I don't necessarily agree. I think, like, he did bring all of this on her. Like, it was not her problem until now. But also, she would have had to deal with it coming back if she was going back to Aelin.
But also, we kind of get later that, like, they're not the reason that the Valg are there.
No.
So, like, I think this would have happened anyway because of who she is.
Yeah, could be. So she's not ready to, like, go back to her room by herself and, like, spend the evening alone. So she asks Chaol to stay at the Tory for supper. And, like, she knows that it's not just about her not wanting to be alone, but she wants to spend some more time with him and talk to him, and she talks to him like she can with nobody else. So.
What?
Yeah.
Fine, sure, okay.
Yeah, she can share things with him that she can't share with anyone else.
Of course.
Yeah, so... Anyway, he then sort of suggests, instead of staying at the Torre for supper, why don't they go out to dinner instead?
Fun.
And it sort of shows that they're crossing a line. Like, this is less, like, doctor-patient sort of behavior, healer-patient sort of behavior, and more so man and woman behavior. Like, hey, we're going to dinner. It's like a date.
It's like a date.
It's like a date. So, they go to, like... It's funny because I describe it in my notes as a plain restaurant. So I guess in Aelin, there aren't restaurants that are just restaurants. There's taverns that's more like a bar that serves food. And then there are dining rooms, like, designed for the uppity, hoity-toity people. But, like, in Aelin, there aren't just plain old restaurants where you can go and eat food, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, that's where they go, because they have them here in the Southern Continent. And he just mentions, like, they just go sit on a patio and eat, and it's nice.
Yeah.
And Chaol mentions, like, he can't remember the last time he's done this. Like, just had a meal as Chaol. Like, not a lord's heir, or captain of the guard, or hand to the king. Like, he's always had his mind split in two. But he feels here, right now, he can just be himself. And
It's like pointing towards them both being comfortable and with each other. Like they've never been before with anybody else.
Yeah. Their connection is special.
Yeah.
And she just sort of feels the same and says that she doesn't really have any friends because how busy a healer's schedule is, and she feels bad when she takes time for herself. So, like, she's just always the healer. And, like, I can see that for people who work in, like, public services like that, you know, that tends to be a common theme, so.
Yeah.
They trade stories about their training, like, she talks about her first few months at the Torre, and, he talks about Brullo, and while at first he didn't want to talk about it because he knew it would hurt, after he finally does talk about him, he realizes that, like, yeah, it hurts, but it makes the pain more bearable to talk about it, and he's sort of honoring him by talking about him. So, what? It's healing you to open up and talk about things?
Imagine.
It's crazy. So then he walks her back to the Torre. Walks her? Rides? Wheels?
Definitely not walks.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're riding. I think, didn't they go riding earlier? I don't know. But they do also have
maybe.
the chair. Yep.
Yeah. But God only knows. So he walks her back to the Torre and they say goodnight. And when she's about to leave, he grabs her hand just for a second. And then lets it go. Sorry. Almost like he didn't want her to leave.
Imagine.
And I almost thought, like, maybe he would, like, twirl her around and kiss her, or, like, kiss her hand or something, but no, just grabs it, holds it for a second, then lets go. But on his way back to the palace, he says he feels lighter than he has in a really long time. Ugh. It's just so fucking obvious.
Yeah.
Like, it's making, like, I understand why it's happening, right? Because we have to want Nesryn and Chaol not together, right? So we have to want them both with other people without making either of them the bad people. You know what I mean? Like, I remember reading Crown of Midnight, and when her and Chaol, like, had that rift, and I was reading it, this was back when I thought it was, like, a love triangle, and that it would be between Chaol and Dorian.
I know.
Legit, right? So, this was back then. So my thoughts were, I'd much rather her be with Chaol than Dorian at this point. And I was like, well, I don't know how she's going to repair that rift between them because Chaol was a piece of shit. So it's like she's trying to do the same thing without making either of them pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Right? She's trying to make it so that the rift exists and is not repairable, which is why it was so easy for us to accept Rowan.
Yeah.
Right?
And, like, there clearly is a rift, but I do think Chaol does come off worse than Nesryn.
Yeah. But I feel like it's also because we don't like him.
I know, but even last week he was like, I hate myself for leading her on, basically. And you're like, yeah, you should.
Yeah.
But...
Well, she's always the second choice.
I just feel bad for her in general. So.
Yeah. Anyway. We go back to Empire of Storms now, chapter 32. So it is Aedian's point of view. And he's sort of debating on where he should meet his father. And he's actually sharing a room with both Lysandra and Dorian is asleep. And Lysandra comes in the room and she shifts into human form and she's like full naked. And she's exhausted and like almost falls on the floor. She's so tired. And Aedian like catches her, helps her get in bed, rubs her back until she falls asleep. But like he can tell that she's drained and that like this is a sleep to replenish magic.
It makes me wonder what she just shifted out of. Like, did she, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, why is she so tired? So the next morning they get ready to go meet his dad. And they actually ambush him as he's eating breakfast. Like, they don't plan a meeting. He just, like, rolls up on him. He's like, hey. And automatically sees a resemblance, obviously. So Gavriel, like, tells him right off the bat that he looks just like her, his mom. And that pisses Aedian off. And he tells Gavriel, like, straight up that she died protecting him from Maeve. And that she was afraid that Maeve would claim Aedian, just like she owns Gavriel. So instead of being healed at a fake compound, she chose to die. Which is, like, I appreciate the sentiment. Like, you're telling that, like, this is who you've chosen to serve, and this is what happened to my mother. Like, essentially, like, you're serving an absolute witch. But, like, he also doesn't know how Gavriel felt about his mother, and he's just, like, straight up, like, she's dead, bitch! Like, you know what I mean?
Like, she died how long ago? Did he say?
Oh, it's been a while. I think he was like 13 or 14.
It had to be 14, before magic disappeared.
It was, yeah, but it, like, I think he was, no, it couldn't have been 13, 14. Maybe he was, like, older, like 10. I don't think he was that small.
Okay. Because she was only, like, 20-something. Like, I think he says it at some point. I don't remember, but... I'm just wondering the timelines, because, like, was she really going to travel to go to, like, Maeve's? Would anyone have traveled if magic was gone? And if magic wasn't gone, what's the harm in getting, like, a human that has magic to help her? Like, someone like, oh my god, what's her name? Yrene. Like, isn't there people that had magic? Like, I just find it kind of confusing. And I don't really understand the timelines, but, yeah.
I got nothing for you.
And, like,
I agree
he's
with you.
a part of a royal family. Of course, like, eventually Maeve's gonna find out about him. Like, she's already after Aelin, so, like, you'd think that, like, if magic didn't disappear, if the world had gone the way it was supposed to, I guess, and she had eventually become queen, like, Maeve would have heard about Aedian at some point and put the connections together. You know what I mean?
No, but I think... I feel like it's all about seeing him, right? It's not about, I think, hearing his name, oh, that's his cousin, like, that's her cousin, is nothing, but, like, finally seeing him is when she'll put the dots together that, oh, hey, that's definitely Gabriel's son. But, like, if Aelin grew up to be queen, like it was supposed to be, he would have pledged himself to her immediately and taken the blood oath, and then Maeve couldn't have taken him at that point.
Yeah, because I'm like, anybody could have easily have seen him. Rowan saw him and within 2 seconds was like, hey-o. like anybody that had seen Gavriel apparently would see this immediately. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess. Plot. She had to die.
But, do you know what, though? But at the same time, like, she was leaving him regardless because she was dying, and she knew she was dying, right? So why would she have to take Aedion with her? Why not send Aedion to the palace where he ended up anyway? Because his only caregiver died, so he ended up at the palace anyway. Why not say, hey, I'm worried for my son because of who his father is if I go to Dornell to heal, so I'm going to go alone. Can you keep my son safe for me? Considering she died and left him anyway. No,
I get what you're saying.
And they had to do that. So, like, I feel like she didn't have to bring him with her to Dornell for her to heal. He's not required.
No.
So, it's plot driven. She had to die,
it's
but
like a Disney movie. All the parents have to be dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so he sort of, like, after that little, like, nugget of information that he gives Gavriel, he then tells him, like, I'll let you help for the cause, but other than that, I want nothing to do with you. And, like, Gavriel's just hurt, because he's just, like, eating his breakfast and is then, like, bombarded with, like, this information. And, like, he tries to respond to be like, dude, I didn't even know you existed. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. And Aedion's like, fuck off! And, like, walks away. And, like, Lysandra just follows him around. Just to be the support person. And they, like, he, like, stomps off his mat and, like, climbs a jungly hill to, like, reach this, like, overlook. And they reach, like, the top of this cliff, and, like, he stops and tells her, like, he didn't need to say any of that.
Which is kind of funny. I do like that he says that.
Yeah, it's like, that might not have been my best move. And she's like, you don't understand that, like, Gavriel seems to want to do anything for you, so, like, he's probably not an enemy.
Yeah.
And also reminds him that, like, you are the general that has kept Terrasen together and, like, gave your people hope when even Aelin forgot about them. And, like, you're a good male, and, like, Gavriel can't say that much because he serves Maeve. So, like, he can't say as much that he's as good a guy as Aedion is.
Do we ever really get his history of why he agreed to serve her?
I think it was just an honor thing.
I guess, because she's like,
like, she's the queen, so he's a fae. Okay. So I think it was an honor to serve his queen, sort of a thing. She also mentions that she's working on something that will frighten them.
Interesting.
A shift of, yes. Then we go to Aelin's point of view. She is sleepy.
Sorry. Yeah.
But, like, she's also annoyed that she needs to choose sleep over sex, because she really wants the sex, but she's also really tired all the time. So, like, her and Rowan, like, snuck back into their room last night. She sort of, like, bathed really quickly, hoping for sex, but when she gets back out of the bathroom, Rowan had, like, already fallen asleep on the bed.
Which is just funny, too. I kind of love it.
I do, too, yeah. So, like, she didn't wake him because she knew he needed to sleep. And then the next morning, he was waking her up with, like, kisses all over her body, and things were getting hot and heavy. And Lysandra just barged into their room to borrow some clothes for Aedion from Rowan. And when she told them, like, they were like, get out! And she was like, Aedion needs clothes to meet his dad. That sort of killed the mood for them. So they didn't have sex that morning. So, like, they just keep being interrupted and, like, not being able to have
We're mad
sex.
about it.
Everybody's mad about it. So they go to Rolf's to see if he's changed his mind about allying with them. But, like, there's this map with figurines on it. And Rolf tells her that he got news this morning that Morath's forces have marched to the middle of the continent. So they're poised to attack Eoe, and also have made it impossible for forces from other kingdoms to send aid to the north. So, like, they're right across the middle. So, like, forces from the south, like Eoe, Melisande, Fenharrow, they can't pass through the center without passing Morath's forces and thus getting in a shitload of trouble. And also, they can attack Eoe, and Terrason's forces can't get down to them without the same thing happening. So, shit all around. So, go back now to Tower of Dawn, chapters 33 to 35. We're in Nesryn's point of view. Her and Sartaq have flown to one of the watch towers near the Karanqui's territory to sort of just get a better look and see if there's any information that they can get from the tower. There were no webs around, and Sartaq was sort of convinced that if any of them had crossed over, the watchmen would see it because they had such a good view. And I'm like, which watchman? Because this watchtower is not in use anymore.
Does he mean, like, in the past? Is he just making a comment about how useful it was in the past?
Maybe.
Don't get it.
But I didn't really get it.
Fair.
The only issue is that there was no clear place for them to land near the tower, so Kadara had to, like, drop them off a little ways away. Like, she can't land close to the tower. So she had to drop them off in a clearing, and then she's just, like, flying around the top of the tower waiting for them. And then we get a little bit of info that all the Rooks and the Dargan use whistles.
What's a whistle?
Whistles.
Did you lose your 2 front teeth?
They use... They use whistles to communicate with their animals. So, like, all the Rooks, all the Dargan, all the horses, they all know whistles for fight and flee and, like, a whole bunch of other codes. So, they approach the ruins of the tower, and there are owl statues on either side, which is apparently important, but I don't remember.
Well, owls
why.
are just the healers, the goddess of healings. Silba, is it? It's just her sign.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the sign of healers.
Yeah. They just make it, apparent that there are owls around. So they head in, and Nesryn takes the lead, since Edge said that there were traps around, and she's like, you're a prince. You're worth more. So, like, she grabs stones from the ground and throws them down this spiral staircase, which I think is hilarious and super smart. And, like, it sets off a bunch of arrows and explosions they hear. And, like, it obviously, like, the force of some of the traps shock her enough that, like, she jumps on top of Sartaq and, like, pushes him to the ground. And, like, I say, quote-unquote, saving him. I don't know if anything got close enough to actually harm them, but, like, she's protecting him.
He appreciates it. Ooh.
Yeah. And, of course, she's on top of them, and their faces are close. And
sexy.
All that jazz. So then, like, as they descend the staircase, she, like, takes her time testing each step, she uses her bow before they step down.
She doesn't just, like, step on each
and
one
they
and hope for the best.
Yeah, no. She's, like, testing it out. They're being very careful. So she sees the first trap that they had triggered with the stones, and it's, like, heavy-duty iron spikes fired so hard it's, like, embedded into the stone on the other side, so, like, he would have died. And she knows that, like, shit, these traps were meant for spiders as big as horses who could think and plan and were articulate and, like, intelligent. the next trap they encountered wasn't triggered, but it was a hole in the stairs. And, like, Nesryn almost fell through, but Sartaq grabbed her in time to save her. And they finally reach the bottom of the tower, and it's a dungeon, and there's cells, and a torture table. And they see, like, a table full of weapons, and there's some writing on the wall, so they go investigate it and, like, keep checking for traps and everything like that. So they check out the weapons on the table, and some of them are, like, still sharp and have ancient carvings running down the blade, so, like, spells or prayers or curses or something. But Nesryn takes a sword because it's still sharp, and, like, that's usually means it's, like, imbued with magic or something. So she's like, well, this is mine now. So she looks at the writing that's covering the wall and realizes it's written in blood and is in the ancient Fae tongue. And Nesryn asks if he knows how to read it. And he's like, no. But he does have ink and paper with Kadara, so they could just write it down and take it back to get it translated. But that would mean he would have to leave the tower, go back to the clearing, whistle to Kadara, get it, hike back, go back down the stairs. So it's like, it's an effort. Yeah. Then a voice tells them that it says, look up.
And of course it does.
And then the voice says, pity, you don't heed it. And Nesryn looks up and screams. And obviously it's a Karen Quee that was hiding in the ceiling.
Like they do.
Which is, like, this is what I don't understand. Like, why would they set traps that are ground activated when they know that spiders can climb walls and ceilings?
Like, who are they trying to get here? Like, they're not going to catch the Karen Quee in this one step that disappears. Like, a spider will just go and Spider-Man some silk and save themselves.
Yeah, but that's Nesryn was like, oh, these traps are designed to kill the Karen Quee.
Yeah, there's something else there.
Anyway, so, like, obviously this Karen Quee is, like, bigger than a horse, and, like, Nesryn compares it in shape to, like, a black widow. So the Karen Quee, like, attacks and is taunting them about how they're gonna die. And Nesryn manages to, like, fire an arrow at it, and Sartaq cuts off one of its legs. But obviously it has 8, so cutting off a leg does nothing. And they're sort of about to take their last stand. Like, they know that they're gonna die because, like, the spider is, like, crawled across the ceiling and is blocking their exit. And all of a sudden, a large gray wolf attacks. And it's as large as a pony. So, like, obviously the wolf has distracted it, so Nesryn and Sartaq run for the exit, and they don't really care about setting off traps at this point.
That they're too fast.
Yeah, they are too fast.
Too furious.
So they just, like, run until they're outside, and they see the spider, like, run out and sort of perch on top of the exit, and the wolf comes out afterwards and is sort of looking around for the spider, but obviously the spider's up here and jumps down on it, like, sneak attack, all stealth-like. And again, this whole look up thing, like, look up. And so the spider is now, like, on top of the wolf, but, like, Kadara joins in and attacks the spider, like, from the air, forcing her onto her back, exposing her underbelly, and Kadara, like, slashes with her talons and beak until the spider is dead. Nesryn then looks at the wolf and sort of sees, like, a resemblance. I don't know to who or to what.
Yeah.
But then like, a resemblance.
She sees his eyes. And they stay the same.
Oh, yeah. Right.
But,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I would never recognize someone's eyes.
Nope.
But, you know, she's a better.
Want to see my eyes?
They're there.
They're there. Anyway, before it shimmers and it turns back into Falcon. And Falcon's a shapeshifter. Like Lysandra.
Wild.
I know. They're not going to be related.
There's multiple lines of shifters.
Yeah. Anyway, Falcon is hurt, so Nesryn sort of stops Sartaq from getting mad at him, because he didn't tell them that he was a shapeshifter. And also that he followed them, which made them upset. So she's just like, maybe save it, because we have to bandage him up, and like, he needs medical attention. And Sartaq actually is like, let's just let him die.
Okay.
Because, well, I guess there's this conception that shifters are like spies and assassins, and like rightfully so, because they can blend in with anything, right?
I guess, but that's just like saying like, this whole species, like, it's not great.
Yeah, it's definitely not, but it's what he grew up with. So like, he's like, let's just let him die. He's definitely spying. But he's like, nah, man, like, I grew up in Aelin, like, my gift never manifested, and then magic left, and he thought he just didn't have the gift at all. But then he came to the southern continent, which still had magic, and he found, for some reason, he could shift, even though he's not great at it. So,
I don't really get why his came so late. Like, I just don't really understand. You'd think it'd be like a coming of age thing.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't either. Anyway, he then, like, explains, like, the reason he followed them is because he wanted to try and find a Karen Kui and try and kill her to see if he could get his years back. Like, if killing any Karen Kui would do it.
Obviously not.
But then he's like, I know, right? But then Kadara killed the spider for him, so, like, he still doesn't know. So Nesryn sort of isn't really reacting to him. And he's like, why aren't you afraid of me? And she's like, one of my friends is a shifter. And then he faints because he's so injured. So, like, obviously, again, Lysandra! Fun. Yeah. So, they fly back with Falcon, and I just sort of feel bad that Kadara has to lug 3 people. Like that's a lot of people to carry on your back.
I'm also surprised that there was only 1 spider there. Like, no other spiders came around.
I don't know, I guess. So, they fly back, and when they land, healers are already there to take him away. And Sartaq, like, flips at Aelin for not telling him that Falcon was a shifter, because apparently he told her what he was. And then Borte, like, examines Kadara and sees the blood and knows something happened. So then Nesryn tells her everything about the Karen Kui and the Valg and all that, because they didn't tell her either. Afterwards, she's on her way back to her room, and Sartaq finds her and asks her about the word keys.
What?
Yeah, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, no, Aelin dragged some information from the collective consciousness' storykeeper and told him about the word keys and how Maeve had them and lost them, and he knows how Erewhon has built his army so fast, or he knows that's how Erewhon has built his army so fast, but, like, obviously he can't have all the keys or everybody would be enslaved by now. And, like, he's just pissed that she didn't tell him anything.
Yeah.
And, like, all she can say is, like, this is why we really need your father's help. Mm-hmm. But, like, all Sartaq can think of is that, like, that's bringing them all to slaughter. Because Erewhon used to fight with, like, legions of the Karen Kui. So, like, he was like, you want us to help you? Really, you just want us to die for you. And she just tells him, like, she doesn't know who has the third key, but, like, she still doesn't tell him about the plan to try and take them from Erewhon. And, like, I just don't see how that's even a plan anymore.
Well, it's not really a plan. Like, obviously the plan is to get the keys away from Erewhon. What do you mean?
Yeah, but like I feel like when Aelin and crew set out for Terrasen, and when Chaol and Nesryn set out for the Southern Continent and Dorian was staying behind, they had an idea of, hey, we're going to steal the keys from Erewhon to save the world or whatever.
Yeah.
However, I feel like that plan no longer exists. And instead, it's rally allies, like, defeat Erewhon's armies, figure out the lock.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like stealing the keys, like, is obviously something that they need to do way, way down on the list. But as of right now, it's not even a consideration. So I sort of feel bad that Nesryn's like, I don't know about the plan to steal the keys. And it's like, oh, girl, that plan, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, it's everything has changed.
Yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, she tells him, like, I don't know who has the third key, but she leaves out the part where Aelin and crew want to steal the keys from Erewhon. So Sartaq tells her that Hone told him of 3 other towers in the area, so they're gonna take Falcon and visit them all.
You're like, why though?
Yeah, they didn't find anything of use at this tower. So, like,
No.
apart from a Karen Quee. So, like, I don't really understand why they feel the need to visit the other 3, but it's fine. That's their plan. But Falcon is gonna ride with Sartaq, and Nesryn is gonna ride with Borte. Borte is insisting on coming.
Yeah.
And, like, it just shows, like, Sartaq is real mad at her.
Mm-hmm.
So, Empire of Storms we're going back to now, chapters 33 to 36. So, it is Aelin's point of view, and we're taking, like, we're coming right back to where we left off, where Rolf tells them that Morath has marched to the middle and they're, like, poised to attack Ylwe. Mm-hmm. So, like, Aelin's just, like, panicking a little bit, because she's like, Ylwe doesn't even have an army. They just have, like, some rebel militia bands. So, they're not prepared for a fight. So, essentially, it'll be a slaughter. And she's sort of realizing the timing. So, the army left Morath 3 weeks ago. And she realizes that, like, the timing coincides with her taking back Ilium. So she took back Ilium around the same time that they started to march. So she's like, shit, this is for Ilium. Like, she taunted Erewhon, so he's sending her a message of what he can do and who he can hurt. Mm. And she looks at the map, and she's considering the life debts in Briarcliff and the Red Desert that she needs to claim.
Interesting, and aligns with the story from this week from Assassin's Blade.
Yes. And, well, I guess with Ansel of Briarcliff not giving her that extra, like, second to run so that she doesn't hit her, that's the life debt there. So, she demands that Rolf give her use of his armada, armed with fire lances he ordered, and like, also, she wants him to promise that if any Mycenians arrive while they're out and about, he'll send them to her. Mm-hmm. Then she drops sort of our knowledge bomb that he is the heir to the Mycenian people.
Interesting.
Yes. And she apparently figured it out because he's got a ton of sea dragon references. And she is claiming the debt he owes her bloodline. So I guess because the Mycenian people didn't come to Terrasen's aid when they were supposed to, that's why they were expelled from Ilium and exiled? Exiled. So she's like, you want Ilium back? You gotta join my cause. And she also tells him, like, I reclaimed Ilium for you to claim, and if you want it. And she's like, I know the Mycenians have been hiding here for a while and have managed to claw back some power. And then she, like, closes her eyes and releases a tendril of power, which sort of, like, flows away in a line, and, like, the world shudders and the waters shiver and the bells chime from its force. And initially, she plays it off as needing to a release of power because she hasn't released any in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And Rowan sort of is like, oh yeah, if she doesn't release any power, it'll consume her, so that's all this was. We'll come back to what it actually was, though.
Yeah, it doesn't take very long.
It does not. And Rolf has, like, no idea that she was as powerful as she was. So, Aelin and Lysander come in, and Aelin thinks that, like, this is why she went to Ilium. For this plan to work. Mm-hmm. This plan that her and Lysander concocted. And Lysander sort of confirms through Arobyn's spy network that Rolf was indeed Mycenian. So, like, this has been a long time in the making. She's been thinking about this for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So, at 11 o'clock on the dot, Aelin stands up and thanks Rolf. Essentially tells him, maybe I don't need I need you after all, and goes to leave. And he then makes a crude remark about Sam, and Rowan essentially chokes him out for even mentioning it.
Yeah.
And I think it had something to do with, like, you know what, I don't even remember.
Did you stop making him beg
right.
for you, like, or something like that?
Like, essentially something about, like, he could tell that when she was here the first time that he was in love with her, and, like, did you ever, like...
Put him out of his misery.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so Rowan is like, don't you dare talk about Sam. And then they all go to leave. And, like, obviously there's something going on, because she very specifically waited until 11. Mm-hmm. And then she sees Rolf's hands and sees black cover them. And sort of knows now that the Valg are coming. Isn't it? Not the British.
No.
The British are coming. The Valg are coming. The Valg are coming.
I was just thinking the same thing.
So, there are, like, these bells ringing constantly, and people are running in the streets. Aelin just tells Rolf, like, good luck, and instructs her crew to evacuate. She's like, okay, let's go, boys. And Rolf is, like, outraged that she's leaving. And he's like, you called them here with that magic. And she's like, no, I didn't. It's just convenient.
Okay.
There are, in this fleet of Valg, there are 2 sea wyverns and 8 ships with, like, at least 100 soldiers on each one. Mm-hmm. And Aelin just tells Rolf, like, she's prepared to leave. Like, helping him isn't worth endangering her cause if he isn't her ally. And even though he asks, like, what Sam would think and where the girl is that destroyed his island for 200 slaves, she just tells him, like, Sam is dead, mm-hmm. and Endovir taught her many things. So just showing that, like, she is a lot more ruthless than she used to be and understands sacrifice. Mm-hmm. He then agrees to join her cause if she helps him. And he says, like, on the condition he wants to be king of this archipelago, and he wants to be given Ilium, and he wants a lord in front of his name. Mm-hmm. And the goal...
I thought they offered him king.
I guess he wants to be king of Skull Bay.
Yeah.
But he also wants to be a lord when it comes to, like an official lord when it comes to Adelin and Terrasen.
Yeah. I guess it's Skulls Bay, or I guess she took back, was it Iliad? Does that mean that he'd be a lord of Terrasen and also king of Skulls Bay?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that makes some more sense. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so Aelin, and he also wants the gold and the spoils from these ships.
Mm-hmm.
If they manage to take it down. Aelin and Dorian both agree to recognize those titles. Mm-hmm. Then we go to Dorian's point of view. So, like, he is in awe of Aelin's plan. Like, he felt her send out that call of power. And he knew it was a summons.
Yeah.
So, like, here she's telling Rolf, that wasn't me! It totally was.
Yeah.
Like, she did this on purpose. She called the Valg to Skulls Bay. She brought this fight to Rolf's door so that he would agree.
To get him to act. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, morally up in the air.
Yeah. And, like, Dorian couldn't believe how insane it was. But Rowan sort of told her that Rolf was haunted by the Valg and terrified of their return, so she's using it to her advantage. Dorian sort of thought that she was wicked. Like, dude, wicked really? Like, what are you, 5?
Yeah. Manipulative? Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But he also knows that the war is not going to be won with smiles. So he's like, maybe I should try too. Like, maybe I should do more of that.
Be more wicked.
Yeah. Fenris is also in awe of Aelin. He, like, saw this, like, felt the power and everything, and he's like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Rolf demands that, like, if any man can sail, do it now. And Aelin demands that Rowan, Lysandra, Gavriel, and Fenris to get on, I guess, Rolf's flagship. And sends Adian to one of the towers that have a mounted harpoon, and to send Dorian to the other tower to ready his magic in case anyone gets close. And there's Dorian sort of feels like he's being relegated to being kept safe. And she's like, it's a safe place for a king. And he's like, you're a queen, though.
What's the difference?
Yeah. But she's like, you have a better chance of, like, I want you to be the one that lives. Like, if one of us have to die, I want it to be me. Because, like, it's true. Like, she's a queen, but she's not a recognized queen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
worst case, he dies. There is another heir. If she dies, that's it. It's just the lords. There's no actual royal... I don't think. I don't really understand her royal line very well.
Well, I guess Adian would be the next, wouldn't it?
Would he actually?
I think so.
Because, like...
he's a prince.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really get it. Because he's an Ash... He's an Ash River. He's not a Galathinius.
That's true.
And the Ash Rivers are the line of the kingdom by Dornell.
Right.
The human kingdom. So, like... I really don't understand. I need, like, a family tree of the royal line.
Yeah. Anyway, so they get on the ship and they're gonna get ready to fight the Valg. So, we go into Aelin's point of view. So she feels like a liar and a thief, but she knew that this was necessary, not only to secure the alliance she needed to, but also to send a message to her allies that she's not just a rebel princess, but a force of nature. And if you don't ally with her, maybe she would show up in their harbors, and who knows what she might do. So, like, it's sort of a scare tactic for those that choose not to ally with her if she asks. So they board the ship, the Sea Dragon, and head out beyond the bay, beyond the shipbreaker chains. So, like I said before, the bay is, like, shaped like a circle, and then there's the 2 towers on either end, on either cliff, and then they control these, like, big chains in between them. So they all head out outside of that, so the fighting is not happening in the middle of the bay. So she sees Adian running up to the tower and sort of remembers Sam doing the same thing, which is, you know, a little callback. Sad, yeah.
Yeah.
She looks at Lysandra on the ship and just tells her, now, and Lysandra sits on the edge of the ship and slips off into the water. And underneath the water, she shifts into a huge sea dragon with wingy fins.
Fun.
So, like we said a while ago, week 1, week 2, probably week 2, that there was a myth that the Mycenians wouldn't return until sea dragons returned.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is, like, how Aelin planned to get the Mycenians to return, is to show them that a sea dragon has returned. So that's why they planned the trip to Ilium in the first place, so that Lysandra could study the murals of sea dragons.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been subtly planted. You know, she's been looking at a
book.
Yeah. Like,
studying the murals.
Studying the walls and the temple,
yeah.
and, like, you know, and saying that she's been planning up something to scare everyone. So this is what it is. Then we go to Adian's point of view. He only has 3 spears for his harpoon, so he knows he has to make count. And he notices, like, there's a reef beyond the harbor that is going to be good for luring and skewering enemy ships. And that's when him and the other men in the tower see Lysandra, and they're, like, all in awe that this big old sea dragon is there and is going to defend them. It is working. Quickly over to Lysandra's point of view, she studied the form of the sea dragons at Aelin's request, so she could do this. And she planned to make her stand on the reef, and she knew that the wyverns wouldn't fight as people with morals and codes, but as beasts. So she would have to do the same. But, like, the one thing that I don't understand, like, does everybody know that Lysandra is a shapeshifter? And like, obviously the people on the boat saw her fall into the water and now see a sea dragon. Yeah. But, like, I guess I mean more like all these people in the towers are like, that's a sea dragon, it's gonna defend us? And Adian's like, yes. Do we think that, like, it's common knowledge that she shapeshifted into a sea dragon? She doesn't hide it.
I don't think everybody knows. I think the people on the boat know. Obviously, Rolf figures it out. He's on the boat too.
Yeah.
But, like, I think he would have figured it out anyway because he knew she was a shapeshifter. But, like, I don't think the, like, random bystanders realize.
But, like, so doesn't that mean that, like, they're conning the Mycenians?
Yeah, she just fucking attacked this town on purpose. Of course she's conning everybody.
Yeah, but, like, I guess what I mean is, Rolf is, like, the heir to the Mycenian throne, quote-unquote. Wouldn't he tell them, like, hey, it wasn't actually a sea dragon, it was a shapeshifter? You know what I mean? Like, his people.
Yeah, maybe he does. We don't know. At this point, I think they don't know. Maybe he'll eventually tell them, but if you're gonna ask people to fight for you, maybe he's like, nah, it's better they just believe it.
I guess. Hope. Yeah, I guess. Okay. Anyway, so back to Aelin's point of view. She's on the ship giving orders. They had iron chains brought up and attached to the center mast, and Rowan was attaching them to her wrists to keep her anchored. And Rowan asks if she's been spiraling down, and she says she has for the past 3 days.
What?
Yeah. So the ships were, like, closing in on them, and it was high noon, which is what Aelin planned, which is why she went into Ralph's office at 10, left at 11, so she would be at her most powerful when the sun is at its highest, because I guess she's fire magic, she gets her power from the sun. So Rowan takes her hand and slashes at it before cutting his own. They then kiss and join hands, so, like, becoming Karanam, he's giving her his power. And Aelin tunneled down into the power she had been diving into for days. So, the day with the Valg in Wendelin, she tunneled for 1 day. This was 3 days, and she still hadn't found the bottom of her power. Rowan sort of had to steady her as her power whispered
to her to keep digging, and he reminded her to, like, aim at the flanking ships. And she starts, like, rising out from the tunnel, bringing the magic with her, until Rolf yells at her to fire. So, go to Rowan's POV really quick. Like, obviously this pillar of flame slams out of Aelin into the sky, and, like, she keeps burning hotter and wilder, and he tries to get her attention, but she tears, like, all of his power from him, and opens her eyes, and she's, like, swirling with molten fire around her, and her eyes, there's no, like, golden ring around her teal eyes, it's just turquoise and silver, and Rowan realizes, like, that's not Aelin, it's Deanna. So Deanna's, yeah, she's, like, a goddess?
Yeah.
I don't know of what. The Huntress?
Yeah, because she's the one that, in the first book, she gets
with the arrow. So, Deanna has taken over Aelin's body, and she tells Rowan to tell the queen who was promised that every key has a lock, and she needs to wield the lock and put the keys back with it. So, it's a message for Aelin, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, then we go to Aelin's point of view, and she is sort of explaining it like she's there and yet not there. Like, she could feel the other in control of her body, and she can tell that it's a goddess who just, like, walked right in and took control.
Yeah.
And she felt that the goddess hadn't protected her entire life, but hunted her. And she felt the goddess, like, examined the fleet ahead and how easy it would be to destroy, which has all the Valg on it, which is what we want. But she felt more life behind her, and to obliterate or to witness what it was to cease to exist the way a goddess could not experience. So, like, the goddess is thinking that she wants to obliterate more life because she cannot die. So she wants to witness death because it's something she cannot do. So, yeah. So, like, obviously, this bitch be crazy.
Yeah. I was like, why is this happening? When I first read it, I was like, this seems convoluted.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's, you know, meant to sort of just give us a little bit more information, but also to demonstrate that
the gods and goddesses aren't necessarily good.
Yeah.
And they clearly have an agenda here.
Yes. Anyway, so she turns from the fleet towards the unprotected town, and Rowan sort of roars no and steps in front of her. And
it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Oh, a terrible idea, but at the same time, the only choice he could make. Because he knew that Aelin would not forgive herself if that town was destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
So she remembers who he is, and she, like, grabs the goddess and throws her out of her body before taking control, and she does manage to aim the power towards half the fleet, but also the ship that they are on. She just, like, pointed the power anywhere but at Rowan, so everything blows apart.
Yeah.
The next thing she knows, she's underwater, and she just feels real guilty, because she blew apart that ship.
Makes
Pretty
sense.
sure she blew up some of Rolf's other ships.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so she's just feeling bad right now.
Killed a shit ton of people.
Yeah. So someone dragged her to the surface and said that they had her, but, like, it wasn't Rowan. And it just reminded her that there were others on the ship, and she probably killed everybody. It was Fenris that saved her, and he was using his magic to leap them through space and bring them closer to the reef. Because that's his power. He can jump.
Interesting.
Is it?
Yes. Winnowing.
Right, yes. Oh my god, yes!
Yeah.
He's winnowing. But the issue is he can only do it a few times.
Yeah, he's not...
It's
He
not
doesn't have a whole lot.
Yeah, it's not the same as like Feyre and Rhys being like do 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 do.
But it does remind me of like the spoiler alert, the Crescent City ones.
Yeah. What's his name? Corcoran.
Mac.
Cormac.
Sorry.
I'm like, Mac? Who's Mac?
No.
Why did I say Corcoran? Who the hell is that?
Croc and witches?
Maybe.
I
God
don't know.
only knows. Anyway, so that's cool. I just, like, didn't even register.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, he winnows them almost to the reef, but doesn't quite make it. So Rowan and Gabrielle are already on the reef, and like there are bodies littering the water, and most of Morath's fleet is gone, but there are 3 ships left. So Fenris sort of orders her to start swimming, and she does, past Rolf's dead men, and she's worried that Rolf is also dead. And that
of course.
and that she killed her first ally. Valid concern. Yeah. And then she feels bad that she stole all of Rowan's magic, which is essentially making him useless and defenseless right now.
Yep.
So
bad times for
it is really bad timing. So like they reach the reef and they stand there, and there are 3 ships coming towards them. So it's her, Rowan, and now Fenris, and they are all out of magic.
I think Gabriel's over there too.
He is.
Yeah, okay.
So, like, he still does he even have magic, though?
Or does he just turn into a lion?
Or is he, is he just, like, a really good warrior?
I don't know.
So, he is there with them. And, like, if Fenris is out of magic, does that mean he can't shapeshift?
What does... Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, never mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway. So, we go to Lysandra's point of view, and she knows that something is wrong. No shit.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees Rolf and his first mate drowning from, like, debris wrapped around them, so she snaps it off and lets them grab her so she can bring them to safety. Mm-hmm. And then she's about to grab some more men when she notices large pools of blood in the water. And she says it's obviously from massive jaws squeezing bodies. And she realizes, shit, those 2 wyverns are preoccupied with, quote-unquote, the feast. A.k.a. all the humans in the water. It's like lunchtime.
Yeah.
Great. No. So, like, she swims up to the first boat and slams into it to sink it. On her way to the second ship, something slams into her, and it's one of the wyverns, and it was double her size.
What?
She's bleeding, and as the other wyvern comes up, and it's like 2-on-1, she swims, like, real fast until they're both chasing her, and she uses her speed and intelligence to kill both of the wyverns. She does it. She does a great job.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And she also manages to sink one more ship, so there's just one left. But she's, like, so exhausted because shifting into something humongous, like, takes a lot of strength. Mm-hmm. So she didn't have a lot of energy to begin with because she expelled so much to shift. And now there's still one ship left. However, she, like, breaches the surface to take in a deep breath of air before getting to the last ship. But she hears Aelin yelling and looks over at her, and she's yelling in warning and pointing at the open water where 3 massive forms head straight for her. Dun dun dun!
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Did we ever have a warning of it before this moment?
I wonder. We'll find out next week. Because that's the end of this week.
What?
We're leaving.
How could you leave us like that?
We're leaving on such a cliffhanger. But that's how it goes.
It is how it goes.
So, this is where we are leaving off this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, Or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Facebook or Instagram at coffeeandcoread or coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week is actually going to be all Empire of Storms, which is interesting and funny. But we're doing chapters 37 to 51. So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.